Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 314, special San Diego Comic-Con 2012 report. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined by my returning co-host, Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulin, and the Duke of Jim, welcome back.
Welcome back to the Raging Bullets podcast. Welcome back.
This is exactly why I edited you out of the last two shows. No, welcome back. On this episode, we're doing a special unedited midweek. We meant to do this as a quick show, and the two of us are laughing at ourselves because we're on a time crunch. We're getting ready for our big Batman episode that's coming up on Saturday. And we're going to be doing Dark Knight Rises and Batman Earth 1. And we wanted to do a quick report before I go on vacation on San Diego Comic-Con. So we were doing this, and it turned into, close to a 3-hour show on the San Diego Comic-Con because we tried to take a gander at all of the panels. And I think we did a pretty good job of kind of covering everything. We weren't going to do one of these, but DC didn't do any of the podcasts this year. So we figured there's kind of an opportunity for us to just have a little bit of a quick say in this. So this really is, it's going to be a little departure for us because it really is a fully unedited show. This is like just what it's like when Jim and I record, and we don't do anything to the show. So this one really is untouched due to time. So we hope you guys enjoy this one. Just understand that a little disclaimer, this is a little bit more unedited than our usual shows. So we hope you enjoy it. I want to give a quick shout out to show sponsors DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Be sure to check them out. We continue to be proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. And Jim, just because this is going to be a lot of spoilers from the San Diego Comic-Con, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we're a spoiler podcast. We will go in depth in the plotline, story twist, and whatnot of the news coming out of the San Diego Comic-Con. So if you haven't read or seen the news, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Without further ado, let's talk some panels.
Great molecules! They're programming the computers for a chain reaction to blow up that atomic pile!
Jim, DC didn't do any of the podcasting from the panels like they've done in previous years. I kind of wish they'd done that because it's pretty easy to do like an audio recording from the panel, just to bring the equipment, set it up, and do the recording. I've always enjoyed those because I think for any fan that can't make it to San Diego, especially with the attendance, they eventually sell out anyway. It's a great way for us to feel like we're at the con when we're not. And I've always loved, yes, you can read, the great Newsarama had coverage online, a lot of great comic book websites have had the coverage online. I pulled my notes for this episode from Newsarama, but there's terrific websites out there about comics that do these wonderful, commentaries on the panels. And DC's own website, actually, in the source blog, did the DC panels as well. But that's not the same as hearing the creators' voices, hearing the tone of voices of the people asking questions. Sometimes a question in isolation from a fan can come off maybe snarky when it was meant in a positive way or a jovial way or something like that. And I find that I enjoy hearing it from the fan's perspective of actually being there. So I wish they had done those podcasting-wise. We haven't done a news podcast from the convention in a while because it seemed like it was redundant with DC doing their own panels. So we figured it'd be fun to just do kind of an off-the-cuff bonus episode where we shared some of our favorite news tidbits, not regurgitating everything because, it's all available on the net, but just sharing some of our favorite news tidbits or the ones that maybe spurned some commentary from us, starting with first the news about Tim Drake. Because of the new timeline and the fact, that's one of the things I need to keep reminding myself. Flashpoint happened, and now this is a new timeline. So everything we knew about Tim Drake from the past did happen, but it happened before Flashpoint. Now this new timeline has caused a shift where Tim's origin's different now. In Teen Titans number 0, it's going to be a Tim Drake-focused issue where we're going to get his New 52 origin, which it sounds like, I'm not 100% sure from the way they were describing it, whether or not he actually discovered Batman's identity. It sounds like he's one of the people who got the closest to discovering it, which is good. I'm glad they're keeping that aspect of his origin. At first, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But then they further explained that The reason why he's only Red Robin and not Robin is because it was so close to the death of Jason Todd that he didn't feel comfortable taking the Robin role directly from Jason Todd, so he made up his own identity of Red Robin, kind of honoring the Robin legacy while at the same time having an identity of his own and not taking something from somebody who just passed on. I like that idea, but how do you feel? I mean, is this something you're shocked about or don't like, or what do you feel?
I actually really like it, just because of the explanation behind it. You know, the fact that it was, so close to Jason's death, and it's a conscious thing that I could see Tim doing, saying, hey, I'm not Robin. He's Robin right here. We're not going to replace this guy. I'm Red Robin. And I am hoping that it was more Tim doing it than Bruce doing it. And I personally hope that Tim does figure out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, because I always loved that part of his story. And if they completely get rid of that part of it, then I'd be like, that I don't know. I'd have to actually read the story to say it. But right now, off the tip of my, just my initial thinking is I don't want to lose that at all. I like the fact that Tim figured it out. I like that he was able, as I always said, he was the heir apparent to me as the Mantle of the Bat. He is that same detective mindset. He has that same style and just everything. That was, the kind of, that was why I always liked Tim. He had that style, that vibe, that feeling to it. It's like he earned the title Robin. Well, they're doing it a little different. He's not a Robin. He was a Red Robin. Really cool way why they're saying that. So I'm going to give them benefit until I actually read the story to see whether he completely figured it out, or was on the path of figuring out, or where they went with it. I'm not sure. But initially, I'm a little thrown by it. I really dig the Red Robin stuff, but I'm thrown by the questionality whether he actually figures out the great secret.
Yeah, that was one of the things, too, for me. It's funny. I think one of the cool things is that they told us that Teen Titans #0 is Tim focused and is going to give us his origin. I'm really excited about that. I want to read that. One of the dangers you always face when you do a quick blurb like that is the story's not there to read right now. So we don't really know what, I'm going to read issue #0, and I'm hoping with anticipation. And I've got a lot of faith because I'm really enjoying the current Teen Titans series. So I'm hoping with anticipation that it's really going to give me a Tim, because I do think Tim in that series is very much my Tim. So I think that this book, and especially Scott Snyder's comments, I don't know if you saw them, it was from one of the panels, he made mention that the story honors the past while at the same time introducing some new twists and turns. I'm okay with all that, because to me, you've got to start at this point developing a timeline that makes some sense. As far as with the fact that with Batman you've kept so much of the continuity, you've got to start now taking what you've got there and saying, okay, how could this have happened the way that it did? And they're starting to do that now, and I like that. It's with DC, I've always enjoyed history. Even with the new continuity, there is some history there, and I want to start seeing some of that laid out. You don't have to spell out every little detail for me, but I think the writers need a certain amount of framework for some consistency as far as what you're going to do with these characters. So I'm excited they're doing that. The further explanations of honoring Jason, I really like that, because that does fit Tim to me. So the fact that he became Red Robin doesn't negate that he worked with Batman. So I'm okay with that. It's a new continuity, and I'm wrapping my head around it. This is a lot of what they did in the 80s when they did a revamp post-crisis. They took a lot of the ideas that worked before, but then modernized characters and things like that, which meant things from the Silver Age that people really liked were gone. They changed those things drastically. And that happens, and that's okay. That's what they're doing here. The thing I like about the Flashpoint concept and the way they did it is those stories all happened, just like all the stories before Crisis happened before Crisis. Mm-hmm. So, you've had this big event. It's now set us in a place where you've got a new universe that they can gradually build and help us understand. And I'm cool with that. I'm at the point right now where books like Team 7 are exciting me, because we're going to start seeing what happened during this 5-year period that is gradually being fleshed out. This Teen Titans issue has me greatly excited. I hope it's a home run, because Tim's a character that's very important to me. I've read Tim consistently since his first appearance. He's a character that's near and dear to my heart. I know you are on the same page with me on that. This is a character that's very important to you. So I'm going to be curious to see how they find a way to revamp his origin, and I'm cool with that. I actually do want to see the revamped origin, because I want to make sense of where he's at now, how he's the guy that he became in Teen Titans #1, because I like that book a lot.
Definitely. And yeah, one of the things that kind of really hit home for me in going through a couple of the panels, because I didn't get through all of the panels because there was just so many of them out there, but Snyder, just his commentary on a lot of stuff, because you mentioned how he was, going on a little bit more into Tim, and and it was just going to be honoring the past. That to me seems like a strong point with him. I'm getting like the vibe from him that he's very, true to what had happened. He's true to the comic book. It's not just, you get that passion from him. And it was kind of a neat thing that I've noticed it in a couple of the other panels, but for some reason, the couple of the other cons, but for some reason, San Diego, every time I saw an interview with him, I could really see the passion come out when he was talking about the Talon series, and just there's so much, I'm like, dang, that's kind of neat. I never really noticed it before. And, to go along with the comments you had about those podcasts, I wish I could have heard his voice going on, and just hear him actually enunciating this stuff. And same thing with like a lot of the creators out there. There was a lot of, hoorah, styling going on, and you're reading it. I'm like, I wish I was there. And it's one of those moments where I really wish I was at the panel. Wish I was at the con.
Well, it does seem like the Bat universe is his book's the flagship book.
Yeah.
He's not the one writing the origin of Tim Drake. That's being done by Scott Lobdell. But I really liked how it seemed like there was a coordination in the Bat family of ideas being thrown out and creators being able to then take those ideas and use them in their own way for their own books. It's something I really liked about Night of the Owls. I liked that crossover because I was reading all of those books. I really enjoy the Batman universe. But I loved that, like, if you're reading Batman, you got the Night of the Owls story there. The whole thing was there. The other books were like telling this expanded story of the things that were off camera that you didn't see. And I like that. I'm a fan of it because now in these books, there's a lot of characters, like it looks like in Batgirl in the annual, we're going to be seeing the female Talon that Batgirl had that one-on-one with coming back, which is great because it was such a great character that was introduced. This Talon that's actually going to be in the Talon book that you mentioned is a brand new Talon. It's one that I don't think we've seen from what I'm reading from that. This is one that's been on the run. It's an escape artist that the Court of Owls has not been able to pin down again since.
Yeah, he's the only Talon to ever escape. And that, for me, I was like, okay, what are we doing with this? And boom, when we started hearing that, I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. And he seems to me like he's that guy who wanted the normal life. And every time he gets that normal life, the Court of Owls catch him and they swoop in and destroy his life. And he's got to bob and weave and get away. And they were talking about how we're going to get more stories of the Court of Owls. Who are the Owls? Who are they? What are they about? And we'll get a little bit more back history, but we'll also get to see, he took advantage of the Night of Owls. The Court of Owls took a beating from Batman. They're still around, but they're weakened. And he's, kind of using this as his point to try to strengthen his position. So this is a series that before I was like, okay, what's this? Now I'm actually very excited by this. And this was another one of those moments where I was like, yeah, this could be kind of interesting, especially when you start looking at the whole Bat family, because the Bat family's got, they're doing it right. They're making sure they got a really big story arcs coming out, making sure everyone can get a little taste of it, get a little access to it, but it's their character's perspective on it. I guess we got a really big Joker story coming out where we're going to see in Batgirl, we're going to see Barbara dealing with, the Joker returned, what Joker's doing. And there's going to be those kind of ties and those kind of connections to it.
That Joker story is going to go through the entire Bat, it looks like most of the Bat line, if not all of it. Because they even said that Jason Todd's going to deal with it, Tim's going to deal with it, Dick's going to deal with it, and they're going to each deal with it in their own books in their own way. So Dick Grayson in Nightwing is going to have his own Joker confrontations that's going to go through multiple issues of his book. And they even said that's going to be a status quo changer. That's going to actually change the tone of his book because of that confrontation. This is a Joker who's going to have a deep psychological impact. Because I think the Joker, it seems like the Joker's been looking at like he's been ignored by Batman with all of this, and he's out to make a bang and make a statement. And I loved, there was an interview with the artist, Greg Capullo, and I apologize if I'm butchering his last name, but I'm really enjoying his work on Batman. and he talked about just how disturbing the appearance of the Joker is going to be, because that Detective Number 1 was a collaboration between Tony Daniel and Scott Snyder leading to this. So that was something all the way back at the beginning of this relaunch that was not a throwaway when the face got cut off and all that, and the stuff we saw in then Suicide Squad and all that that's been going on. That's all been building to this point, and I love that like this thing that seemed like, okay, he did that, and then is the Joker going to be magically healed when he comes back? No. that event that happened that seemed like it happened to Detective, and now Batman's going to deal with something different. It isn't. It is very much that story now is coming back, and we're going to see a big, deep psychological. It's called Death of the Family. Yeah, is the name of the story arc, and it's going to have far-reaching impact in the entire Batman line, and that's something that I think is going to be really cool. I like how they're handling this now, and it makes sense. Like the Batgirl story should not be the same story that's happening in Batman. It should be how that affects Barbara. Nightwing's should be how it affects Dick Grayson, with some overlap where it makes sense, because these are characters that know each other and they're friends or, comrades, or one's a mentor, however it depends on how you look at their relationships, or even the Jason Todd one where it's a combustible. But, I like that we get to see these different perspectives from people who would naturally have very different relationships with each other and with the Joker. For Jason Todd, his relationship with the Joker's huge. Joker killed him.
I want to see the payback, and I want to see that confrontation between the two of them. I want to see where it goes. And I'm pretty sure it was Snyder who said this is going to be the craziest, darkest Joker story yet. And just that comment right there, if they're going for full-on dark, crazy, psychotic Joker, I am really, really excited for that. I really want to see where they're going to go with this, because you start thinking Joker, you start thinking the sick and twisted stuff he's done. If they're going to take it, if they're going to turn it up to 11, I want to see what that is. It's, in a scary, kind of freaky sort of way, but I really do want to see that. I want to see where this goes and how, because you talk about just that psychological effect of all the characters. Every member of the Bat family has some form of psychological scarring, damage, dealings with the Joker. The one I really want to see, and I didn't hear his name get mentioned, but I'm assuming he's going to have some type of run-in with the Joker, is Damian. I want to know how that little monster deals with the Joker.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's a given, probably in Batman and Robin. I don't know. I didn't hear. You're right. I didn't hear any announcements about that either. But God, that's got to be that's a give me.
Oh, there's got to be, because you think about it. Damian probably will have that notion of, hey, I should kill him, but no, the code of the Bat. I failed once before. I'm not going to fail my father this time. But I can just imagine he's going to be toying with the fact that I should kill this guy, but I can't. I can't do that. I can't, cross the line. And
do you think he's meant? Wait, and I don't mean to cut you off here, because you're making an interesting point. I actually want us to expand on that point you're making. Do you think it's that cut and dry with Damian? Because I'm not entirely convinced Damian mentally is saying what you think he is. We've seen Damian kill and feel justified about it. I think the only area where we see him being upset would be disappointment from his father. But I don't know that Damian really feels the code the way that Bruce does.
No, I don't think he does. He's obeying the code not because he believes in it. He's obeying the code solely because of his father.
But he's not really obeying the code.
Well,
because, he just killed nobody.
Yeah, he's killed a couple people, and I think the reason he hasn't killed everybody he's crossed is because of the code.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is, I guess that's my point. I agree that he's trying to follow the code, but I don't know that when it comes to the Joker, how he's going to view the code. I guess what I'm doing is I'm backing up what you were saying before. I'm very interested to see Damian's confrontation, because I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think Bruce is trying his best to show him a new way, and I do think Damian's doing his best to try and unlearn and maybe learn a new way, but he is clearly not there yet. So how is he going to react to this? And that's interesting to me, because I don't know that it's as cut and dry of, I'm going to follow the code. I don't know if that's going to happen, because he didn't with nobody.
Right, yeah, that's going to be a tough one. Yeah, and I don't know. I'm with the Joker, and it's weird because I love the code of the bat. I love the fact that he doesn't kill. But I'm kind of in the camp that I wish Batman would have killed him a long time ago. I like my heroes not killing. I like that about Batman. But with the Joker, he's the one that I always say, there is no reforming. You can never, ever, he'll never be able to be a productive member of society. And those are the kind of for me, like capital punishment. I'm all for capital punishment, but I'm also for punishment should fit the crime. You got a multiple killer, I'm thinking it's okay to kill them. And I got no problem with someone who's got multiple homicides marked under their name. They should be killed. They shouldn't be locked up for life. And that's just, And so when I look at the Joker, I'm like, kill him. But I like the code of the bat. I like the fact that Bruce doesn't cross the line. So I always get this conflict in me whenever I think of the Joker, whenever I think of Batman and the Joker. And Damian getting thrown into it, this is going to be a really wild card. And, you add, Damian and, Jason Todd. I always thought those two should be the best of friends because they pretty much have similar codes, similar, outlooks and feelings on the code of the bat, but they're not. They're at odds with each other. They're button heads, and it's such a really cool family dynamic with the Bat family.
I'm looking at Nightwing. They're talking about the Zero issue, and this is going to give us looks like a revamped origin of sorts of Dick Grayson becoming Robin, where we're going to see a new 52 version of his Robin outfit, which I'm excited about that. At first, I was like, I was reading that, and I'm like, ooh, I don't, do we really need to mess with that? And I'm kind of like, well, yeah, because it's, like everything else, it's a new history, so I'm okay with that. I'm curious to see, I think this is for them, it's a definition of Dick Grayson, as they've said, being this guy who keeps moving forward. And what led him to become Robin. So I'm curious to see that in the New 52. I also really like that they announced in issue 13 of Nightwing, we're going to get our first appearance of the New 52 of Lady Shiva.
Yeah.
Which is a character who I'm dying to see in the New 52.
Oh, yeah, both of those 2 points. When I read the news on that, Dick was going to have a different costume, I literally wanted to give someone a hug. I was just like, thank you. Thank you. It's so that the traditional Robin costume always annoyed me. And that's one of the things I really liked about Tim when he came on the scene. He had that personalized, the new costume. I was like, yes, this is a costume that makes sense. I want to see a very similar costume to what, Tim had, the quote-unquote traditional Tim Drake Robin costume. That's what I'm hoping they go something on those lines. Get rid of the pixie boots, get rid of the little, short shorts, give him an actual costume that has some form of protection, some type of clothing that will, allow him to withstand the cold nights in Gotham.
Wait,
how about,
hold on, dude, you do know where his Robin costume came from, right?
Yeah, it came from the Flying Grayson's costume. I know that.
Right, so it was honoring his family.
Yeah, but you can honor the family by putting on a pair of pants.
But they didn't wear. But they didn't. But
giving him some armor, some protection.
Dude, his parents were murdered. So the idea was this was his way when he went out there of honoring his parents, the Flying Graysons, who died. I actually really like that part of the origin. Now, first of all, I'm going to say I'm not disagreeing with you at all that his New 52 origin, I'm cool with it having a new costume. I'm going to be curious to see what they wind up doing. I'm hoping that in some way they do link it to some important part of his life, whether it's his parents or something else, because they can totally revamp the Flying Grayson's outfit and still make that a part of the history as well. So I'm not knocking the idea, but I'm saying I always classically liked it because that whole costume came from what the Flying Graysons wore as circus performers. And he was always the acrobatic partner of Batman. But case in point, that was a very different era. So in this era now, I'm with you, a functional outfit is very cool, because that's something that fits more of this era of comic storytelling. So I'm cool with that. I'm not disputing you so much as I'm defending the history of the character's outfit, because I always thought the history of the outfit was cool. And I think that that's a neat thing. I think you can still do that today, modernizing it, while still having that kind of emotional impact to it. Because I always liked the idea that Batman's costume was somehow influenced by his dad dressing up as like a Zorro-style Batman. With that costume that we saw in Dr. Hurt wearing. I mean, I always liked that element of being something a part of the Batman mythos. So, I don't know, I get kind of into that legacy aspect. You can have that still while having a new 52 and a new direction. So, I'm not saying it has to be the pixie boots or whatever. I'm fine with the change, but I always liked the aspect of that storyline of his costume, which is why I'm defending what it was in the past.
Yeah, and I'm I'm knocking it, but I understand where it comes from, and I do agree with you. That is a neat aspect to it, but it always just annoyed me of the functionality, and there could have been better ways to tweak it or change it, and it was just always something that rubbed me the wrong way. But it wasn't to the point where I was like, oh, this is ridiculous, I can't read this, or I couldn't enjoy it. I did and do enjoy that era and those stories and the costume. It was something that always was like, come on, it's
not
it's
always
like the underwear on the outside.
No, hold on. It didn't always bother you. It bothered you as you got older. When you were a kid and you were playing superheroes, you did not sit around saying, geez, that costume's non-functional. Nobody does that. That's something that as you got an adult, you get more rational. Like, are either of us going to run around today in a pixie boot outfit? Absolutely not. But at the time when Batman and Robin were super cool growing up, I was not watching Super Friends and going, gee, that suit's not functional. Nobody was doing that.
I always thought it was weird.
Really?
Yes, I always thought the Robin costume was a bit weird because Batman, and as a kid, I didn't know the whole backstory. I didn't know where the costume came from. I always thought it was weird that Batman was, the dark and shadows, and then Robin's this bright colored Flash and the shorts and the thing. I'm like, why? Yeah, I did always, kind of wonder why Robin, wasn't more clothed and didn't wear pants. And I did kind of think that, but it didn't bother me per se as a kid. It was a thought I would have.
Well,
but
color
as I
contrast.
got older, dude, that is something that irked me or kind of had me going, why are they doing this?
The color contrast I totally get because, you've got Batman with a much darker suit and Robin more of a target.
Yeah.
I actually really liked in Tim's outfit the black back to the cape.
Yeah, so you could actually step into the shadows. Yeah.
I always liked that aspect of it. In Batgirl, they're going to once again take a look at, and I like this because I want to see a new 52 origin of Batgirl. Why she became Batgirl. What was the thought process that led to that? But then in the annual, besides having that Talon Mary, it's also going to be Catwoman. And Gail Simone was mentioning in the panel that she looks at this as a dark side twist to like a Birds of Prey.
She called it the Birds of Dismay in an interview. And I was like, oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what that looks like. I don't know. Did you get to read the first issue of the Dark Knight, the Batman The Dark Knight series with the new writer?
No, I haven't yet.
The Scarecrow one? It was really good. I really liked that. And the issue 0 is going to be featuring Joe Chill and what happens to him with the Wayne murders and everything. I like that these 0 issues for Batman, because you've got 4 books, are each going to be focusing on a different aspect of the younger life of Batman. Going back to his history and his training, years before he came to Gotham. Each of the writers is trying to pick either a story that needs to be defined for the New 52 or a story that hasn't been told before for the history of Batman. I'm really excited for 0 month.
Yes. Yeah, the 0, when you first told me the initial concept, because I was a little bit behind on everything, I was like, what? Huh? It kind of, I was like, then as I started reading more and learning more about it, like, this is a really cool way they're doing it. And I was glad that we got 12 issues. We got a full year into the new universe before they went and did this. We got a chance to understand these characters, get a feel and get a vibe for them. And now we're going to get the 0 issues. Now we're going to learn a little bit about the past, those questions, those nagging questions that we have. We're going to get a couple answers. We're not going to get answers to everything, but we will get a little light shed here, a little bit here. And there's a couple of the 0 issues I'm really looking forward to. The Teen Titan ones where you talked about Tim, Focus. That was something I was like, yes. I was wondering how they were going to handle it. Because of Teen Titans, I was hoping they would make it a Tim focus, but I can't be greedy and say because it is a teen book, but I'm glad they're kind of not, they're just concentrating on Tim.
Now, Batwoman's doing some guest or is having a guest in her book in Wonder Woman. And it looks like Batwoman, not looks like, we're definitely going to see Batwoman guest starring in Batgirl coming out, where we get to see these two characters interacting, where you've got the older Batwoman meeting with the younger Batgirl and kind of what that relationship looks like. So I'm really anxious to see Batwoman interacting more with the DC universe like this, where it makes sense. So it's going to be cool to see that. And then Scott Lobdell was talking about how in Red Hood and the Outlaws #0, we're going to see the origin of Jason Todd.
Yes.
And he said it's a very, very sad story of how he became Robin and how that whole story went. So I'm really anxious to see how that all plays out. And
big time.
Looks like we got some solo adventures coming up for Starfire and Red Arrow because of what's going on with, or Arsenal, I should say, because of what's going on with Jason Todd being a part of the Joker thing. So I'm going to be curious to see how all that plays out as well.
Yeah, I'm liking the fact that they're not shying away from separating up on the team and just having those spotlights and those focuses, because that was something that when the Red Hood and the Outside the Outlaws first came out, we were like 2 out of 3, and we weren't comfortable with Starfire, and now we're getting to see her. We're getting a comfort level with who she is. I'm glad they're branching that off, and we're going to get some more stuff with her.
Detective Comics is getting a new writer with issue 13 with John Layman, and he's coming over, and it looks like he said they're going to be fast-paced, mostly self-contained issues. Every issue will have a case or an adventure of its own, and the first story arc is called Emperor Penguin, and you think it's a penguin story, but you're only half right. So I'm going to be curious to see that book. I kind of like that he's looking at that book and saying, what can I do to distinguish Detective Comics from the other Batman books that are out there and make it a little different? So I'm looking forward to that. I always liked when Paul Dini did those kind of done-in-one issues, or they would be 1 or 2 issue story arcs and things, very quick, fast-paced, bam, cool cases and stuff like that. So I'm very anxious to read that kind of storytelling from John Layman in that book. It's very cool.
Now, what else has he worked on?
Chew?
Okay.
I mean, that's the first thing that has come to mind. That was the one David Barron, remember he named his company ILL?
Yeah.
I Love Layman?
Yes.
That's John Layman. Have you had a chance to read Chew?
No, but I've heard about it.
Chew's very good. That's something I'll let you borrow if you want to read it, because it's really terrific. It's a series. I jumped on late, and it was just because of repeated recommendations, including from David Barron, that this was just a terrific book. But a lot of our friends of the show have mentioned how much they were enjoying Chew, and I'm like, I've got to finally pick up and read this book. And it's one of those I'm reading in arcs, just because I get so behind on material outside of DC, because we're constantly reading stuff for the podcast, but it reads very well reading a bunch of issues together. It's a very, very good book. So this is a writer who, coming on to Detective Comics, I'm really excited because I think he's going to have a very fresh take on the whole Batman thing. And I'm very curious, especially just hearing what he's going to do with it. It sounds like he's really looking at how can I distinguish this book as something different, which is important to me as a Batman fan. I'm reading right now the digital release first, Legends of the Dark Knight, and that is going to be collected in paper. All of these digital firsts that they're doing, I don't know if you know what they're doing with the digital firsts. Every day of the week, Monday through Friday, they have a new digital first comic coming out. So Monday through Friday, you can get brand new stories every day from different series. And you can count on, like one day's Amikami, which is based on those statues. Mm-hmm. And then you've got things like Masters of the Universe, Smallville, Legends of the Dark Knight, and stuff like that. And, through the course of the week, and the Batman Beyond and Superman Beyond series that are all coming out certain days of the week. So it's really cool to get these digital offerings on certain days of the week, just as a different sort of delivery method. It's what I liked about the weekly book.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
So you are getting weekly storytelling delivery in that format. But what I love is every one of those, it looks like, is going to be collected in paper for people who don't want to read them digitally, which I think is terrific. You've got paper being transferred over to digital. You got digital being transferred over to paper. So you're not leaving anybody out when you're creating these stories. So I like that. I'm glad that they're doing that and handling it that way. I like that they're looking at the digital and saying, though, how can we experiment and play around with delivering digital a little differently than we do our paper product to make it a different sort of excitement? And I think that's really important. I think it keeps a nice energy of people who like reading these things in the digital format and then maybe like reading some paper. Because I'm a hybrid. I like paper. I like digital. I like some things in trade. I like, I think the different delivery methods of comics. I like these one-shot hardcovers we're going to be talking about on our next episode, Batman Earth 1. I'm really into these things. So I think comics having just different delivery methods and different storytelling methods really make it a far more interesting experience when writers have a chance to kind of craft stories based on the delivery method. Catwoman's got a new writer coming on. Ann Nocenti, and I'm probably butchering her name to death, is coming on board and taking over Catwoman. And looks like we're getting a new writer on Green Arrow. It looks like it's going to be Judd Winnick. I'm guessing that's a swap that they're doing there.
Oh, nice.
I think. Just because that would take Winnick off of Catwoman. So I'm assuming the zero issue with him being on there might mean that he's taking over Green Arrow. So there wasn't any clarification at the panels, though, on what's going on with Green Arrow. So I don't know how that's going to go, but I'm taking the Zero issue is going to be what that's going to be moving forward. We'll see what happens there. But I'm excited she's going to be taking over Catwoman and see where that book's going. I've been really digging Catwoman.
Oh, definite. You know what? I saw the one brief comment where she was saying about, just keeping, they're talking about the sexiness and just how she's like the femme fatale and just it fits her style. And when Catwoman first came out, there was a lot of that controversy, a lot of, hey, what's going on here? And I kind of liked how they were using that because she was using it as a covering and a masking of what her true feelings, what her true anger. She was scared, she was angry, she was nervous. She had all these emotions coming out, and so she just, kind of buried it and hid it. And that kind of fits who she is and fits where she's coming from. And I don't know, I'm kind of curious to see you continue that style and see where it goes under the new helm. I was liking the story beforehand, so when I hear changes coming up, I'm like, but you know what? I've read a couple of her stuff now, and I'm like, okay, I think, I could see her doing a pretty cool Catwoman, and let's see what happens here.
Now, they did a quick Q&A, and I just want to shout out a couple of these really quick. They were asking about the time frame of Court of Owls and Joker. Does Bruce get any rest time? And Snyder said that Greg Capullo actually called him up the other day and asked if I hate Bruce. Number 12 is going to be a one-off issue, but in number 13 he mentions the Owls and says, thank God that's over. Then Joker shows up. So no, I guess the answer is no. He doesn't get much of a rest. They talked about, is there any pressure to sync up with the movies? There is the commentary, which it makes sense that they go hand in hand, which means they will influence each other, but also that they are two separate entities. And so no, it doesn't, you don't have to completely follow the movie, but it's always cool, I think, for fans when there's elements of the movie that are recognizable in the comics, but I think even more to the fans, we geek out more when there's elements of the comic that are more recognizable in the film. So I do think that there's an energy there where you want a little bit of a coexistence between them. And then there was a question about what's happening with Widening Gyre, and they said they're not ready to publish it yet. And I'm taking that as, and this seems to be what DC's doing when they get creators who are doing these miniseries. Let's get it done and then put it out so we don't have delays.
Which I'm okay with, and I like.
Yeah. When Volume 2 of Widening Gyre comes out, that's fine. I don't care. Have it done. Have it come out consistently so that way the first issue gets the same amount of readership as the last issue, if that makes sense. So that's great. I have no problem with that at all. Jim, in the Superman panel, Scott Lobdell's Zero issue is going to be his first issue. They're going to show not only the final days of Krypton, but life on Krypton beforehand. Jor-El finding out that Krypton's going to die, and finding out that his wife's pregnant, and how they react and what their relationship's like and stuff like that. And he said that that's something we don't get to see very often. Very rarely I think we've seen miniseries where they've dealt with Krypton. And I think we've seen, issues where we've had Superman kind of travel in time and be able to somehow pop magically into Krypton, seeing his dad and stuff. But I think there's something different about in isolation seeing it this way that I think is going to be really neat, especially in this universe, because we've seen how much the style of the costumes and everything has affected the direction for Superman and Supergirl's outfits. And there's this Kryptonian legacy that's very important to Supergirl. And there's a history there that's being crafted where Kryptonian history is affecting our universe. Even things in Supergirl, they mentioned that we are going to find out, and through both Superboy and Supergirl, why she hates the clones so much. This idea, Kal-El's an insult, that he's an abomination of Krypton. It really is due to there were clones on Krypton, and these clones went haywire. She's looking at Superboy as a powder keg, but is Superman going to see that the same way? Because Superman's attitude's going to be, obviously, the typical Superman thing is going to be, there's hope there. Maybe we can find a way to direct that differently and prolong him from hitting that route, or maybe even stop him from hitting that route. And I like that. I like the idea that Supergirl and Superboy are going to see it differently. She grew up in a place where these clones were abominations, and they had deep-rooted effects on her world. Clark didn't have that. He wasn't, he was born and then left. So he doesn't know the history there. Even if he knows it on paper, you don't have the emotional resonance when you weren't there. and there would be something different between the two characters. They did mention with issue 13 of all three of those books that we're going to see a tighter crafting of the Superman world. I shouldn't say all three of those books. That includes Action Comics, where the Superman world's going to be more interconnected than it's been previously, a little bit tighter synced up. And I think that's a good point in time to do that, because I think we've dealt with in the last year developing individually who these characters are. Now is when you can start having a little bit more interaction and reaction from what's going on in each of those books, because I think they have strong identities now. At least I feel that way. I feel all three of those characters, Superman, Superboy, and Supergirl, now really do have well-defined identities in the New 52.
Yeah, definitely with development of the characters. And it's something that I'm such a, so heavy into the Bat family that sometimes I don't talk about, or I don't sound excited about Superman. But it's weird because I'm such a, Superman's my guy, but I'm so into the Bat family. I'm so into the interconnection. I'm really glad to see that we're now going to start getting more of that connection between the titles, because we had a bit here, a bit here, a bit here, and I'm enjoying each of the individual titles on their own, but I was missing kind of a cohesion between them. I want to see that, but again, the way they did the universe, it would be hard to just throw everyone in together, bam, boom, drop them in one giant melting pot. They've had to take the time. They had to do the nice slow build, which we're getting. So we're getting these characters, and as time, they're going to develop their own relationships, and it's, through the process that we'll get a better understanding of the characters. We'll see some growth and some change in them. So this is a definite win-win situation. As I'm hearing you talk, and I'm doing a little bit of quick reading about what's coming down the line. So as excited as I am currently about the Bat family, I'm seeing some really cool stuff coming down the line for the Superman clan.
I like the idea that Lobdell wants to work on the Clark Kent character too, saying that he's looking at Clark Kent as an opportunity. Like he said, Superman, when you're Superman and you're pushing planets and things like that out of the way and stuff, people are going to be looking at you, and every word that you say, you have to watch everything. And I like that he looks at that Clark is Superman's chance to have a self-expression, to be able to be, a little bit more open about his thoughts, feelings, and opinions about things, because he isn't Superman in that moment. He can be Clark, and Clark can have a different identity with that. So he's looking at him less and less as the bumbling guy and more of that Clark is a personality. And I've always liked that in Superman storytelling, in Superman TV series and films, in his own book, when we get to see a Clark that does have an importance and a voice. You and I were fans of shows like Lois and Clark and Smallville, where you got to see a Clark Kent outside of the costume and having an active role at the Daily Planet, and working with Lois, and seeing that kind of friendship and partnership. And it looks like that development, that's what Lois Lane's role is going to be. They're going to be best friends first, but at the same time rivals, for stories and stuff. And I like that. I really think that aspect of the book is something that I want to see back. I want to see the two of them eventually wind up together again. It doesn't need to be a rushed experience. I want to believe it. And in order to do that from where they're at now, you're going to need to craft that relationship over time. I like the idea that Clark's going to be dating, and that they're not Lois. I mean, dating other people, and just developing, kind of an identity of who Clark is in the romance department. Is he going to be suave? Is he going to be a mess? What is that all going to look like? And how does his life as Superman affect those relationships? Because we've seen in certain Superman storytelling right now that he kind of looks like a dog, because he never seems to be there. And that would be something that, like, if you're keeping a secret, you're not going to go tell every girlfriend that you have, hey, by the way, I'm Clark, and, this is our second date, and I'm Superman. I mean, you're not going to do that. That's something after, really heavy, strong relationship. There may be people he dates that do find out, but that is something that should not be revealed immediately. That's something that they should learn over time. And so I'm curious to see that aspect of his life. I think that's stuff that the New 52 is just getting into developing, and we need to see more of that. I want to see more of those relationships built. So I'm really excited for 13 and beyond for Superman in particular, because I do think that that's an area that I really want to see develop now. We've got the origin in place. We got what his status quo is now in place. And I think that's what the first year was all about. But now that we've got that all out of the way, now it's who is he? And I think we need to know that now. I think that's a part of Superman that's missing is, okay, now we've got the status quo. Who is he now? What are his supporting cast like? What are those relationships like? Let's develop that further and really have some deep-rooted development there, along with the great Superman action storytelling that we're looking forward to.
Oh, definite. And one of the things that I kind of got a quick glimpse on was with Lois Lane and the interactions and the role she's going to start playing in the Superman universe. And we've already seen a pretty cool relationship between them, but it seems like they're going to continue on the process, and they're going to continue on the growth of Lois and Clark. It's not jumping into a relationship. It's, they're friends. Clark, it sounds like, is going to be the shoulder that, Lois, comes to when she's having boyfriend problems, which is kind of an interesting dynamic, considering I look at these two and I think of the great DC love between Lois and Clark, and we're not seeing that yet. And on one hand, I always will miss that, but on the other hand, I'm liking this friendship. I'm liking this growth of those two as partners, as friends, and it's one of those things I'm anticipating. That moment, that one moment in time when it turns, when they stop being friends and something else develops. And I'm anticipating it, but I want to see the growth. I want to see it come down the line and take their time with it.
Supergirl having her own Fort of Solitude, I think, is something that's going to be really cool. It's not going to be like Clark's. It's going to be something different that is more deep-rooted in her heritage and history. And I like that. I like the idea of her needing a base, because we really don't have a home base for her of any sort yet, especially, with the fact that she's more of a fish out of water on our planet than Clark is. And she really is more of adopted than he is. He's adopted, but he's adopted like I was. I was adopted as an infant. So, I don't remember. I was born in New York. I was in New York for a day. So, am I a New Yorker? No, I didn't live there long enough. I'm an Ohioan. This is where I've always lived my life. And Clark's the same way on Earth. In Supergirl's case, she had a Kryptonian life. She's here at this planet, and these people, they're all aliens to her. It's like being dropped on an alien planet. And to the point where she doesn't trust the people who are Kryptonian that are here, like Superman. For example, Con-El, obviously, for her reasons. That I love that that's an insult. Yeah. But he'll redeem it. I got confidence.
Abomination of the House of El.
Yeah, that's great. Which is a nice twist in the whole thing, because it throws the Con-El in there as a geek out for us as fans, but saying, hey, no, it's not. He's not your Con-El anymore. And I do like that. It's one of the interesting things about the New 52. Let me ask you this: we're almost a year after the New 52 being kicked in. And you and I lost some of our favorite series when this kicked off. For example, we were both in the same boat. It was between Birds of Prey and Secret Six, which was our favorite book each month. And, Secret Six was that title that, above everything else, was one of those ones that made us go, hoorah. And that book's no longer here. And we lost certain characters. We gained certain characters, Animal Man and Swamp Thing, for example, which we'll talk a little bit about when we get to the panels. Animal Man and Swamp Thing, are two characters that I think have really benefited from the New 52. They're characters that before I was interested in Animal Man. We saw that stories where they were traveling around together with Corey and with Adam Strange, and I loved him in that role. He's a character, though, in the New 52, when they revitalized him in his own solo title. Really, there's a great, huge distinction as far as what an Animal Man story is like versus any other superhero. Swamp Thing, very, very. Those books are interconnected with this whole idea of the rot versus the green and the red and all that. I love how that whole energy is around in the New 52. I love that you don't need to have read any stories with those characters at all in order to jump into their books, but that they're supernatural, semi-horror filled. They're really telling different types of story than you're going to get anywhere else in any of the other comics. Aquaman's another character that I think's really benefit from this. So a year later, do you think for yourself, I'm sure you're missing certain characters, because Secret Six is a book that I tossed on top of my head. I'm missing that. Do you find that there's a lot of books that you're saying to yourself, I'm really missing those right now? Or do you find you're more excited about the new material you're getting now?
I'm still missing Secret Six.
Me too.
I'm still, that's a book that because that was my favorite title, and you can't get rid of something and not miss it, because that was just every week, every month I was like, yay, and so I am still missing that. But of the characters, like, for me, it's like, you miss something that's gone, but of the characters that I have, I'm not missing the pre-Flashpoint Superman or the pre-Flashpoint Batman or the Flashpoint, Bat Family. There was some really cool stories and I liked them, but what I'm getting now is just as good, and I'm enjoying it just as much, and there's some anticipation and some excitement that's coming down the line, for what I currently have and what I'm currently going to get. So for me, I don't think I would say that I'm enjoying it, enjoying what I had as much, if not more. There have been some stuff now that, with a lot of the magic stuff, I'm really into the different magic, the different supernatural side of the DCU that I really wasn't following as tightly before. There's a lot of just, different concepts. Like, I'm super, super heavy into the Legion and the concept of the Legion, of both the two Legion books and just, the Legion of superheroes. I'm like, man, this is really neat. I'm really liking where this is and what they're doing. And I get the rabid loyalties of the fans. And it's something that as was growing, I was like, yeah, okay. But this reboot really kind of hit it home for me, because I really got this, I'm getting more of a connection to these characters because I'm getting more time with them. But I never felt like I lost anything from what I had in the previous stories. I was like, okay, it's a continuation of building. So there's a lot of stuff that, I look at it now, I'm like, hey, this is just as cool, if not better. There's, I'm going to say there's a lot of stuff that is just as cool, if not better, than what I had before. So I'm very happy with this reboot. I'm very happy with the stories I'm getting and, where it's going to. I as I said, you miss a couple stuff that's gone. A couple of the titles that they introduced that are gone, I miss them, and I'm going to miss them for a little while until we get something, until we see the characters again, or until I get something that feels that same type of vibe for me.
I'm used to favorite titles either ending on purpose because they were supposed to end, like Starman, for example, or books like a Manhunter, that are canceled just because they didn't garner the readership. Throughout my, Vigilante, we both liked. But throughout my history, characters have died, stuff like that. Ollie Queen died at one point in time, and then we got his son, Connor Hawke. Now, for some people, they became fans of Connor Hawke, and then Connor Hawke was gone. So that's, same thing with Wally West. Wally West is somebody, Wally West was my Flash. Now, I knew Barry when I was a kid. I didn't really read Barry. I read broken issues of Barry. So I get the people that, when they go to cons and say, are we going to get a Wally West? And they did say no Wally West right now in this run. But they have also said that doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity to maybe introduce him in the future. It's just, they'll do that when and if it makes sense. I do know that the same thing comes up with Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain are both mentioned, and they mentioned in one of the panels that they're characters that down the road they would like to try and find a way to introduce them. But Stephanie Brown's Batgirl book I thought was terrific. I adored that book. It was a great, great book. Now, I'm enjoying just as much Batgirl because I'm a Barbara Gordon junkie. So, the Barbara Gordon Batgirl book right now I think is absolutely terrific. I just think those characters, there comes a point in time where there's changes, there's shifts and things like that. And whenever that happens, as comic fans, they can only publish a certain number of books. They can only have a certain number of characters going. And we all have that disappointment when that title that we've been digging is gone. I do think right now the good that's being published outweighs the things that I've lost. Very hard to say with a Secret Six. But, I lost when the JSA series, when Jeff Johns left that. You took a writer who I thought really defined how to tell amazing JSA stories, and he left that, and that came to an end. Sometimes good things come to an end. And when they do, you cherish the fact that you had the opportunity to read those things, and you look for the next thing. I'm looking now for my next Secret Six. And it's not going to be Secret Six unless the sky opens up and they introduce a new Secret Six. But there's always an option in the New 52 to do that. So I hold out hope that at some point in time we'll get that. But I'm looking for those titles. And, I'm going to be honest with you, your Aquaman right now is in that kind of category of being that ultra cool book. Animal Man and Swamp Thing for me they're titles that are surprising for me, like Secret Six was in the day. How much I'm enjoying them and how much they're really captivating and grabbing me each month. So there's a lot of titles out there that are hitting that mark of being just top quality, different titles. That's what I liked about Secret Six. It was a different sort of vibe and feel that you could only get in Secret Six. And those 3 titles that I mentioned, Aquaman's not like any other book I'm reading.
Right.
Animal Man's not. Swamp Thing's not. Those are just 3 titles for me in the New 52 that really stand out for that. Captain Atom fits that bill too. And the only reason why I've been kind of leaving that out of that discussion point was not that I'm diminishing Captain Atom. It's we know that title's coming to an end. So I'm looking at the ongoing ones, that are continuing to go on after the Zero issue. And, those are titles that are interesting. Captain Atom was mentioned at one of the panels as being a character who is still going to be in the DC universe. So we're going to see him. These characters where their books are being canceled are not vanishing. They are going to be appearing in various places in the New 52. And they're also saying over the next year they're going to be introducing more characters that we haven't seen yet. I actually like that. I'm glad they didn't, say, let's roll out every possible character we can in the first year. It just doesn't make sense. And I think you water down then the characters that you've introduced. If you're building the universe, and that's what there was that vibe. I think that was in the publishers panel. There was that vibe that we're building a universe here. And we're rolling out characters gradually, trying to really establish them, put them into proper places within our universe. And it looks like they're really trying to build a foundation with as many characters as possible. And taking a certain number of their titles and using them as experimental books to see what sticks with the fans. Which I think, we talk about a Secret Six. Secret Six was an experimental book at the time. We love that book and adore that book so much because it was that great experiment that just really worked well. My love for Gail Simone comes not only from her top-tier books like Birds of Prey and Batgirl, but also, stuff like All New Adam, which I thought was terrific. Welcome to Tranquility, her Gen 13 run and stuff like that. So those are smaller books that, really give a creator a chance to take some characters and rework them in a way that they're interesting. And I think the New 52 has a lot of characters that are like that are in that place that's interesting. Firestorm, I know I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. Firestorm is going to be merged into one being again. And it looks like it's going to be Jason and Ronnie sharing the same body. What do you think about that?
I'm kind of glad. I don't know. I'm kind of glad with it. It's, it was kind of neat, the two of them, with it just, you have a couple different variations and dynamics. But for me, it just seemed like, it seemed like they were trying to please too many people. Like, hey, we have our Jason, we have our Ronnie, we have all these things, and it wasn't, let's just, boom, go with what we got. This is who we are, this is Firestorm. And it's something that's built and grown to the point, so it's not like, this is, the story's kind of, the characters kind of evolved, but I'm kind of happy to see that get merged back into one character, get merged into one Firestorm, and see how this goes, and see, because I always thought it would be interesting to see the dynamic of these two working together. Now, we got to see that dynamic because they were each their own separate entity, but I always was kind of wondering the psychological, those two in one body, who's going to be in control, how is it going to happen, when's it going to be like a shift, kind of like tag, you take over, this is more your area, hey, this is your strong suit. And just that was what I had notions in my head that we were going to get. So if we're going towards that, that's what I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of this is where I kind of thought it was going to go. So I'm kind of happy to see that.
Yeah, it's I liked the previous run of Firestorm, what was going on there. I liked the idea of Fury and that whole concept. So I was digging all that. At this point, I know we're getting a writer shift. And when a writer comes on, and I think to me it's always tough when you're a writer and you come on a book, if you don't try to make the concept your own. I think I know Dan Jurgens well enough through all of his writing to know that he's not going to throw everything that's been done before out the window. That's always my big thing when somebody comes on a book. Don't toss everything out the window. He's going to find an organic way to lead it in the direction that he's going in, where it doesn't ignore what's happened previously in the series, which I think is important. But also gives a jumping on point for people to try Firestorm again if they haven't been digging it, or if, it wasn't their cup of tea, or maybe they didn't try it the first time around. You got a new writer coming on. If you liked his work on things like Justice League International, you liked his recent Superman work, or you've liked him previously on things like Booster Gold, great chance to jump on and check what this writer's going to do with Firestorm, because they're going to rework it and give Firestorm a different direction. And I'm into that. Let's see where it's going to go with Firestorm. I'm glad they're giving that book a continued run, because I like the Firestorm concept a lot. I've been digging the current series. It's a book that I think is in a transition period right now, and I kind of want to see that transition happen. So I'm hoping that this Firestorm concept works out, and I'm just very curious to see where it's going to go. Now, I'm looking at things like the DC Now panel, but before we go to that, there's a piece of news that we didn't talk about that's huge that I'd really like to discuss. Sandman. Neil Gaiman on Sandman. I was drooling. I had to do a double take. I'm like, you're doing what? And I figured it was going to be some form of collected edition of his previous work or something like that, or a prose story or something, all of which I would have liked. I'm not knocking any of that. We're getting a whole new miniseries of a story that hasn't been told. That part, J.H. Williams II, too, is going to be doing the art.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Sandman. I got laid in on the game. I got laid in on Gaiman. As a writer. And just his style and who he is and how he handles things. So for me, that now I'm getting this whole brand new story that hasn't been told. So I'm like, hey, that's kind of neat. I'm on the ground floor now with with one of his stories. I'm, granted, there's going to be a lot of people who have a lot more knowledge on Sandman, and because I had to actually stop and think, okay, where is he talking? Yeah. And then it was one of those things where I had to stop and think about it. But then I'm like, oh, this should be a really cool story. This is kind of neat. Oh yeah. And then when I read who the art team, artist on there, I was like, oh, this is going to be good, because I do dig his style, and I think it'll fit, the Sandman, it'll fit that vibe and just that kind of, definitely, this was when I kind of had to wipe away a little bit of the, I'm sitting, I was drooling a little bit in anticipation.
It was funny when he was, when they were talking about that, J.H. Williams, I was really worried because I'm really liking his work right now on Batwoman. I love the writing on it. It's not going to take him off Batwoman. He's still going to continue writing that series. So I love this because we'll still get Batwoman and we'll get his artwork on this Sandman mini. One thing I'll say for anybody that's a Sandman newbie, if you're like, I've heard of Sandman and I'm kind of nervous now because it's a mini series, but I haven't read any Sandman, or I've read very limited Sandman. I jumped on Sandman late as well. It was still being published as a monthly book, but it was one of those things where I'd heard such good things about it. It was about midway through the series that I jumped on. And the way that Sandman was released, if you see the trade paperbacks, how they're released in different books, you can pick up those trades and read those stories. And the story that's in those trades are usually very contained within there. Because Dream it's kind of like, it works in some ways, kind of like shows like maybe Twilight Zone does, where Dream a lot of times was a narrator. And you saw things that were happening to people in the dreaming, or in their interactions with the dreaming throughout their life. So these, in many ways, Morpheus was the supporting character in his own book, if that makes sense, kind of like what the Phantom Stranger used to be and things like that. And it worked out really well. There was a great development of the Endless, the whole family that was going on within the series, but you didn't need to be reading all the books in order to understand that development. They were well developed within their individual arcs that you could pick them up that way. Now, is there a benefit to going back to the beginning of Sandman and reading the whole thing? Absolutely. So I'm not knocking that. What I'm saying, though, is don't be intimidated if you're like, I've heard such good things, but that's got so much history to it, I'm just never going to be able to jump in. They're crafted in such a way, because I jumped in late. They're really crafted in such a way where I did not, for years, go back and reread from the beginning. I didn't have the budget at the time. I just started reading it monthly, about halfway through, and I just enjoyed the story as I was going through. And then when I was working and had the opportunity to pick up the trades, I finally sat back and read the whole thing. And that's a terrific experience too. But don't be intimidated if you're like, budget-wise, I've only got a chance to pick up the mini. Do it. Enjoy it. Because this is going to be great. It's going to be the ground floor for a lot of people. And you're missing out on something really incredible if you're not excited about this. Make it your first opportunity for Sandman if you haven't had one yet, and pick up this miniseries, because it's great that he's coming back to comics. It's great that this is going to be an original Sandman story, something new that he always intended on telling. I'm glad that this story is being developed, and I do think it's something that don't be intimidated with, because I do a lot of times. There's a lot of series where for people it's like, I don't know if I want to jump into that with all that backstory and history. And this one doesn't. You do not need to be intimidated at all to do that. Kind of like Hellblazer. Hellblazer's one of those books too. I jumped onto Hellblazer late. And Sandman's very much like that. You can jump on a Hellblazer right now and just start picking up what's going on in the current book, and you gradually get yourself like entrenched in the whole universe. And I'm that way with Hellblazer. I have not read every Hellblazer story. I would love to go back and reread all of Hellblazer. There's so much history there. I just don't have the time to do that right now. So I've just been, I've picked an occasional trade here and there of the older material, and I dig them a lot. I just haven't had time to read the entire Hellblazer. I mentioned on the show about a year and a half, 2 years ago maybe, I don't remember now, when I started reading the Andy Diggle run, and that got me really heavy into Hellblazer, and I've been reading it ever since. So, Sandman's a lot like that, so I'm hoping people get excited for this.
Okay, got a Sandman question for you, since we're talking, and might as well throw it out now.
Sure.
Okay, so we got Morpheus. Now, where's Neo?
The funny part is he's probably in there somewhere. It's one the dreaming world, the way it works. I think some clever fan could probably find a way to justify that Neo is somewhere in the Sandman universe because it's the dreaming. So I guess there's a way to explain everything in the Sandman universe. That's funny. I'm like sitting there, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to let me put on my Sandman hat. It's been a long time since I read all this. Jim's going to ask me something about the 75 issues, and I'm probably not going to know the answer to it. So glad you gave me a silly one.
Hey, no problem.
Justice League. Issue number 12 is going to be a big shakeup issue. It's a double-sized issue. We've seen this team that's been put together, and I love Johns explains it as like they get together like on the weekends or something like that, or once or twice a month or something like that, and they have these big missions together. But they're a symbol, but they're not the team the public thinks they are. There's a little disjointedness to them. With issue 12, they face a threat where they need to become that team. And that's what this year coming up is going to be about. They said they're going to lose some members and gain some members. One of the members they're going to gain is Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Or Shazam. I think he's going to be referred to as Shazam. This story that's going on with issue 0, I guess, this is where we're going to finally get the origin, or get Billy getting his powers. And I'm really excited for that. I'm excited to see him brought into the team. How are you liking that Shazam backup? Do you like the new origin and the new take on it?
Oh, I definitely like it. And I know there's probably going to be some traditional Captain Marvel fans who are not liking the fact that Billy's a bit of a putz, but I'm digging how it's playing out, and I like, again, a modernization of the story and just how they're introducing all, Mary, Freddie, and the full cast of characters that are connected and associated with Shazam and, with the Marvel family. I like that. And just some of the concepts going forward, how, one of the things they talked about was how he and Cyborg are kind of going to be buddies. They're going to be friends. And it was something that I never really thought about. Those two, if in my head, okay, who would be good friends on the Justice League? Those two weren't the two that popped in my head. But you think about it, it's kind of, they're both kids. They both have that young at heart. They're both kind of thrusted into this crazy world. And it's not like, they would latch onto somebody else who, a similar lost soul. And it's kind of a neat way you think about it, superpower magic, superpowered, technology working together. And just, hearing that, I was like, that's going to be a neat combo. That's going to be something kind of interesting and cool to see.
During Morrison's initial run on JLA, that was Kyle and Wally, because they were the odd fish, with this. Everybody else on the team was more of established legends, where these were the younger versions, the newer fish. And the two of them got together and became really close friends. And it was funny. I had the same reaction at first, same way you did. But then I can tell you feel the same way. It just makes sense. And I think it's going to be great for the book to see that dynamic between those two characters. So I'm really excited for that as well. I like how that book's been developing. I like that Green Arrow had that like tryout issue, didn't make it into the team, and they said that's something that he's going to hold a grudge over. Yeah. And I mean, it makes kind of sense for that relationship, and I want to see how it goes down the road with that. But I really liked the issue where Green Arrow, I should say, was trying out for the team, and just how the whole reaction was to him. I do think we've seen in this last year, it's not a Justice League that came together and they're instantly gelled. It's a Justice League that needs to develop over time. And I like that there's going to be an event that's going to make Aquaman say, hey, we need to tighten up and we need to become the team everyone sees us to be. And Aquaman seems like the kind of character that would do that. They said that he's going to be the one in issue 12 that really kind of brings that to bear. And I'm going to be curious to see who stays, who goes, but also what characters they bring in. And what that whole lineup's going to look like. I'm really excited for it. Justice League has been a must-read book every month, and I'm really, really digging. Is it for you? I mean, I'm saying that for me. I don't know that that's...
Yeah, it's definitely a must-read for me as well. And it's funny because, all our arguments about reluctant leaders and whatnot, Aquaman is a character that... You see him step up. You see him be a leader. You see just that style to him. So I was really glad that he's going to be, kind of be more of the gel, more of the. I see him kind of taking more of a solid leadership role of the Justice League, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that.
The Cheetah is going to be in issue number 13, and that's leading into that Trinity War, which we saw the teaser art for a while ago. But I remember Billy was on there, but also so was Black Adam. So I'm looking forward to seeing, that whole lineup. But also on that cover was the new Green Lantern, I think.
Yeah.
That one that's going to be introduced. And he carries a gun, Johns was saying, because he doesn't necessarily trust in the Ring's energy powers and stuff like that. Now, they did give more information at one of the panels about the Green Lantern crossover. One of the questions that our listeners had, and it was on our website, it was on, I think, a Facebook page, was, do you need to pick up all of the Green Lantern books in order to read this upcoming storyline in Green Lantern and with the Third Army? And they said no. It's going to be one of those where you can read the books that you're currently reading. If you're reading Red Lanterns and you want to know how the Red Lanterns interact with that, you can just read Red Lanterns and see how they interact with this whole thing. I like that. I'm a fan of that. It's something that, and it sounds like going forward, that's something they're trying to do more and more. I've become a huge fan of that in comics. I think if you write stories of value in a crossover like that, I think you're going to hear buzz where people are going to say, hey, you read Red Lanterns and you're digging this. You should really pick up Green Lantern Corps because of this, and this. And I think that's a way to get people to try out new books because of good stories, not because you have to. And I think that kind of confidence, I think it builds confidence in your readership. Forced crossovers, I think, are a thing of the past. I like the idea of throwing out a mini-series that headlines an event or having one title that headlines the event like we did with Batman, and then having the other titles either reflect what's going on or tell stories that reflect how their heroes in that particular title reacts to it. I just think that leads to better storytelling, and it lets the creators who are writing those particular books really craft something that's neat and unique. I'm jumping to something else, and I'm going to jump back to Green Lantern. A great example would this be All-Star Western. They had that one issue with the Talon in there, but the Court of Owls are still appearing in All-Star Western as in the background, as they're kind of doing their old puppet master thing in Gotham while trying to stay hidden. And I like that that's something. It wasn't a throwaway. It's something that Gran Palmiotti said, hey, we're going to take part in this event and do a little, because we got a history in Gotham. We're working here. Let's have fun showing just how deep-rooted this history was of the Court of Owls in there. To me, that's great. You don't need to, and here's the thing, you don't need to be reading any of the Batman books to be digging that story in Jonah Hex. It just happens that because Jonah Hex takes place at that point, this is what happens with the Talons in the past. It just happened to be something that they ran and jumped with it, but you don't need to know anything that's going on present day to dig any of that. Green Lantern's doing that with this event, and they said this storyline that's coming up in Green Lantern with the Third Army is a storyline where it is going to lead to the next arc and the next arc. What we've seen with things like leading into the Sinestro Corps War and stuff like that, that's been a strength of the Green Lantern books. One event leads into the other. And there's always something going on huge in the Green Lantern books. It's why Green Lantern is a must-read series of books. Even if you're not reading the whole thing, you should have one Green Lantern book in your collection right now because these are really top-notch titles.
Oh, God, yeah. When I was sitting there and I'm kind of learning about the new Lantern, I was like, okay. And, then they started talking about just the Third Army and where it's coming from and why it's coming around. I was sitting there and you just kind of start just getting pulled into it. And the one comment, the current story arc is a prologue to this story, to this story, to this story. It's a prologue, this is a prologue, this is a prologue. And it's just a building and building on each other. And I was just like, dang, that's how I want my story. So it's that layered storytelling. It's the building. It's that, you go into, you're in for the long haul, but the whole time you're getting cool stories. It's not like, okay, this is a building for this. No, it's still a really cool KK story that you're really going to enjoy. But guess what? That story has ramifications here. And then that story has ramifications here. And it's, that's because that's kind of the way life is. Life is a series of building. It's, this moment, what happens here, is going to affect how you deal here, how you deal here. And that's something that really has, been told really well in the Green Lantern stories and in their inner, universal events and just the shapings and the happenings and the whatnot that is the Green Lantern universe has been a really exciting, run for me. And I was so glad to hear that it's, this is just the beginning of everything. This, big event of the Third Army isn't the ending. This is just the whole new beginning, a new change coming down the line for the Green Lanterns, but it's not like the end of the Green Lanterns. It is just a metamorphosis. It is just a growth, an evolution of who the Corps is, who these characters are, and I want to see where that goes. I want to see what happens.
Now, there are some changes coming to Green Lanterns. In New Guardians, there's going to be a new lineup with issue 0. And when I say new lineup, it's going to be new people from each of the color corps. Some of them are going to stick around. Kyle's still going to be in there and things like that. But there's going to be a change-up as far as which characters are from representing each of their respective corps in certain cases. Now, besides that, one of the things that Myron pointed out, and you weren't with us when we had our last 2 episodes, but I want to get your thoughts on this. He said on the covers, we don't see Hal or Sinestro, and we do have a new Green Lantern of Earth.
Yeah.
So what do you think happens to Sinestro, to Hal, or both?
I was thinking actually we're going to see new Guardians. And I'm thinking Hal's going to become a Guardian. And I'm thinking Sinestro may become a Guardian.
Here's the thing, though. We don't see them during in the picture. This is in the crossover where it's the Guardians versus the Corps. The point is, in this battle where we start seeing this thing come up, because it's the Guardians going after the Corps because they're trying to destroy free will. They think there's been too much free will. In those cover arts that we're seeing, the 2 characters that are missing are both Hal and Sinestro. One of the things in the discussion that Myron and I are having that came up is the possibility that either Hal and Sinestro are either A, killed, B, depowered, or C, do they somehow become part of the Third Army?
See, I can't see them becoming part of the Third Army.
Not willingly.
Oh, yeah, well, but I don't know.
This is a group that's known for lobotomizing people.
True. That definitely is a possibility. I was always thinking that it's not even about being depowered. I was thinking they were going to get powered to a level beyond what they are now.
How?
Well, I'm still trying to get my hands around this.
Because here's my problem with that. I like your idea of them becoming new Guardians and stuff like that, or whatever. I could see where you're going with that. I don't know that I necessarily want that with them, but it's a reasonable direction. And certainly storytelling-wise, we're going to go there, so I'm not disputing you. But that would be something that would happen after this event, not during it.
Right.
Which means we would see them present on those covers. They're taken out of the game prior to that.
True. And I'm thinking they're getting taken out. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Well, and wait, hold on. Just because they're not present from those covers doesn't mean that that's true. This is speculation. So I do want to clarify that. You might not see it the same way. Maybe you're not thinking they're going to be taken out of it. So I guess I'm throwing out speculation like it's fact, and it's not. So I'm just throwing out what some of the speculation is and just getting your thoughts on it. You don't have to agree with me because it's just speculation and nonsense. we had a great discussion about it, and I love geeking out over this stuff like we normally do on the show. But as with any discussion like this, a lot of times we as fans, we had a Robin discussion that was going on our Facebook group page, and I was one of the people that was guilty of this. We start throwing out things like they're fact on an issue that hasn't even been published yet. And we're doing, I'm catching myself doing the same thing here with this Green Lantern discussion, as you and I often do. We get in insane debates on things that we're speculating about. This is a great example of that. So I guess what I'm trying to do is give you an opportunity really to get your own thoughts in it, but I'm trying to also give you I guess where it is a fact, these are things that Myron and I were chatting about, so I want to hear your thoughts and where you see it going, because these two were clearly missing from the covers. Do you think that means they're going to be out of the game, or like you said, you're thinking they might go to something higher or something like that? So that's one of your speculation pieces in there, which is interesting. Maybe they are going to go that route. Who knows? I do think there's going to be a change with the two of them. So we're not – I don't necessarily think it's going to be the way you think it is, but I'm with you, and I think where we're very in sync is that there's going to be a status quo change for the two of them, at least for the duration of this event.
My thinking is during this whole big event, we're not going to see them. Or maybe we'll see a blip here, a blip there, a blip there. I don't think they're actually going to be part of it, because whatever this change that's coming about, I think it's going to end up being kind of they're taking a little, they're doing a flanking movement against the Guardians. I don't think, in the main big battles, the Guardians are going to think, okay, we've depowered Sinestro. We've removed Sinestro and Hal Jordan from the mix. We don't have to worry about those two. Well, guess what? You can't keep guys like that down. You can't stop them. You can't slow them down. All you can do is hope that, maybe you'll be able to catch them in the end. And I think they outsmart and maybe outflank. Maybe this could be something. I was thinking a Ganthet maneuver, maybe Ganthet helping them out, or Ganthet doing a little something. Because, eventually Ganthet's going to fight the lobotomy. Eventually, he's going to flash back, and we're going to get the guy we know, the guy that we actually like and trust. He's going to come back. And when he comes back, he's going to be a little bit perturbed at his brother and at what they did to him. So there's going to be that ramifications going to come down the line. So I was thinking that, that cover with them missing is intentional. They're not going to be in the quote-unquote main story. There's either whether we're going to actually see what they're doing off the side, or maybe we'll get little glimpses of what they're doing off the side. But I'm seeing a big, massive flanking maneuver, kind of sweep off the side. Holy God, oh my God, here's your big swerve, surprise. This is what we were doing all along, sort of story being told.
Yeah, I don't know. We're seeing things. There's a lot of similarities in what we're seeing. I don't know that I necessarily – the fine details I think we're going to differ, but that's what happens with speculation. But I think one thing we can all commonly agree, there's some major status quo changes with those. Because I guess I'm thinking – I don't know what you're thinking. I'm thinking the ring the new guys got is the ring that Sinestro has.
Could be. That could be the Sinestro ring. What about Hal's ring?
I don't know.
I was thinking it could be Hal's ring.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe or that's...
The other thing I was also thinking is Kyle's ring. Now, I know Kyle's still in the story, but part of me thinks they're going back to the Ion, where Kyle doesn't need a ring.
See, I think Kyle's going to remain a Green Lantern, but I could be wrong. I think he's going to remain a Green Lantern because I think if you take a look at the theme of the New Guardians, it's a representative from each of the Corps. So that would lead me to believe that Kyle will remain the representative of the Corps versus being an Ion-type character, because it looks like they're establishing him as a Green Lantern. I might be wrong. I don't know. I could be wrong there. I think the ring that Kyle has is still going to be that one of the Guardians are perturbed that they can't control because they've tried to do that. And I think their lack of ability to control that has been very frustrating for them. But I don't know. I could be wrong on that too. So we'll see where it's going to go. I think that's part of the fun of speculating on this. I think there's so much going on in this story that's really hard to pin it down. And I like that there's so much stimulus going on with this. I like that with the Zero issue, we're going to get an origin of Guy Gardner in the New 52. Because he's somebody who, because of the changes to Justice League International, for example, and his backstory is going to have to change accordingly. There's going to have to be some details to his history that are going to have to be a little different. So I'm anxious to see what that is. What is Guy's backstory in the New 52? These are some of the details. At the panels, one of the people asked Jeff Johns, or they mentioned to Jeff Johns that they were tentative about the New 52. And it seemed like they were being positive about it, but they were also mentioning that they missed the history. And Jeff Johns was actually, I thought it was really cool. He said, no, it's something that I missed too. And he said, it's something that we're crafting as we're going along. And I want that. I want that to be crafted as we go along. I want there to be a history there. That's why I think I'm so excited for Zero Month, because this is where we start getting some of the history. The part that I like that as a fan. I like history to the characters. And I see the way I still look at things, and I don't know that every reader agrees with me. I don't know that you even agree with me. And if you don't, please say so. My take is the history's all there. Everything that happened, I look at Flashpoint as being a pivotal event in the history that then opened up this window for this continuity that we're getting right now. But everything that happened before Flashpoint. It's all a part of DC's continuity. That stuff still exists because of the way that Flashpoint was crafted. I like when they do that versus basically, versus like if Flashpoint was an event that blew up the universe and they're saying, guess what? None of this ever happened. This is the Big Bang. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as there is now a shift. And we've got now this jagged turn into a new timeline where this planet that we're dealing with right now has its own history that will echo things from our old world. And a lot of what we're seeing with Batman and Green Lantern echoes what happened in that old world. But it's going to be some of it, like Guy Gardner's history, for example, and Tim Drake's history, is going to be different because these events happened in a much shorter time than they did on our world. And I like that. I think that's something it's going to be interesting once we see that fleshed out. These are stories that I need now. Mm-hmm. This 0 month's coming at a point where, okay, you've given me a year of this now. I want some of these things fleshed out. I think one of the things that Lobdell mentioned was the confusion over the comments about Teen Titans, because he said that they did make mention of a previous Teen Titans in one of his issues, and he said as we were crafting this backstory, we were considering there being another Teen Titans before this one. He said in the history now it wasn't. That is not the way it's going to be. This is the first group of Teen Titans. He said he's explaining it away as it being, he read a Teen Titans comic or story when he was a kid, or a TV show when he was a kid, and that's, what it was. I don't know if he's actually putting that in the comic book continuity or not, but he was saying this is now the first group of Teen Titans, and those flashbacks were just that of team-ups between those characters versus them being an official team. When Corey talks about having those friendships and things like that, those were friendships that they had, team-ups that they had, little crossovers that they had, but they weren't an official team identified as the Teen Titans. So that's something that's been clarified. I actually really like that he addressed that, and it kind of explained it as being this was kind of a flub because it was a direction we were considering going in, and we're going in this direction instead. That's why I think it's important for 0 month to come out now, because I think we're going to get some of the answers that we've all been looking for. Like, let's get some clarification now. Give us some more of the details of the backstory. I think as fans, we all want that now. So I'm salivating for 0 month. I really want some clarifications on some of these things that I've been kind of head-scratching on. Not in a bad way. I think there comes a point where some of that head-scratching builds to anticipation. The problem becomes when you've got that head-scratching and there's never a payoff. And I'm glad to see now that they're saying, okay, we're going to you can't give you everything, but we're going to take some of these events and give you a payoff. We have crafted this history for you now. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to. One of our listeners mentioned on our website The History of the DC Universe by Wolfman and Perez. Did you ever read that? They collected it in trade. Did you ever get that?
I think I got it, but I never read it.
When Crisis was done, they crafted a new history of the DC Universe. But that was something that was crafted while the stories were being published along the way and kind of developed that history. So I'm sure a lot of the writers who were writing the stories at that time didn't have that history laid out in front of them. It was something that Wolfman and Perez crafted, then those writers would then react accordingly. A book that echoed it on a deep level would have been a book like Wonder Woman, because Perez was writing Wonder Woman at the time. So, it would be, a book that was deeply connected to that type of thing. But some of the other books, I would react to it as that came out, and they said, okay, in History of the DC Universe, they kind of defined that this happened with my character, so I'm going to work this into my book as we're going on. That was something that I really enjoyed. Jason Todd changed because of Crisis. So the Batman book, Jason Todd was the Robin before Crisis. He was the Robin after Crisis, but his origin changed after Crisis. So, that was an event where, very similar to what we've got going on now, it changed for a number of characters. Characters vanished. Characters died, like Supergirl. Characters were completely reworked. Other characters stayed the same and kept, most of their status and their history. Some of their supporting cast was changed and things because of it. Wally became the Flash due to that event. So, there were changes in that. The reason why I'm referencing it here, a lot of what happened then is a lot of what's happening now. I remember reading a lot of DC then, and there were things that made a ton of sense to me then. There were things where I was like, okay, how is this happening to this character? And you just over time started to figure it out because that was developed over time. So there were deeply established characters where everything made sense right from the get-go, and there were other ones where you needed to get to know the new character, the new continuity. Wally was a great example of that. And it led to fantastic Flash stories featuring Wally West. Which, is why I reference books like Animal Man and Swamp Thing and Aquaman. These are exciting stories that have come out of what happened in Flashpoint, because that event took place. And there's, Earth 2 is now a book where this is a story coming out of Flashpoint. Now, we've got a new Justice Society that's happening on Earth 2, if that's what they're going to call themselves. I think we're all assuming that, but the book's called Earth 2, so what is that going to develop like? Stories like they're going on in World's Finest. These are all things that are spinning out of what happened in the Flashpoint event. These are new stories with these characters, new versions of these characters. I loved the Huntress that was being delivered to us before Flashpoint. This is a new Huntress. This is Bruce Wayne's daughter from Earth 2 that's over here now. This is not the same Power Girl. I loved Power Girl series before Flashpoint. This is a new Power Girl now. But World's Finest is one of those titles that I'm salivating over each month. Birds of Prey is a title that I'm starting to really enjoy now. And I'm a Birds of Prey fan from before. That was one of my favorite books before. I'm really getting into what's going on with Birds of Prey. I'm excited to see Team 7 and some of these new series that are coming out of this. So this is a lot of what happened in the 80s when they reworked these series and reworked the continuity. There was a lot of, that, oh my God, I can't believe they killed these characters in Crisis. Or I can't believe that, this doesn't exist anymore. And that was, in Zero Hour made big changes to the DC Universe as well along the way. Now, there's going to be fans that said, I really like this event. I really like that event. I really like the status quo changes that came afterwards. There were other ones where I needed to, take some time and get used to it. Fans are going to fall in all different kinds of places. The New 52, you and I speculated before this all hit. And we were, very tentative on a lot of these things here. But as they've been fleshed out, I'm finding more that I love than I'm uncomfortable with or missing. Secret Six is one of those, I think, for us, we mentioned Stamp. That's a series that I'm missing. So we're normal like any other fan, and we miss certain titles. I'm used to, that happening, though, where books get canceled. Secret Six had a tremendously long run for a series, like it was. I mean, that's a risky series to kick off. You're writing a book about all villains, and, it's not a established book. It was a brand new concept that came out of an event. I love that they gave that book a chance, and it's going to go down in history as one of those books that I will constantly reread because it was just that darn good. And I do hope we get another Secret Six in the future. That's one of those titles that I do want to see again, the same way that I wanted to see a new JSA that we're getting in Earth 2. So I feel like now with Earth 2, I've gotten one of my pieces of my puzzle back. I want to see down the road, I'm hoping we have an opportunity to get a new Secret Six. This is going to seem strange. I'm almost hoping it waits until Suicide Squad finds a way to free up Deadshot. If that makes any sense at all. Because I like what's going on in Suicide Squad. So I don't necessarily want to see that book canceled to be Secret Six, because I think they're two different concepts. So I'd love to see if there's a way that maybe another character could kind of fill Deadshot's spot, and maybe we start a new 52 version of Secret Six with the right writer attached. But, that's something I'm willing to wait for.
Oh, definite. And, it's funny because when we both say we want Secret Six, we both want only one writer attached to Secret Six.
Bingo.
Because it wasn't just the characters. It was the creative, it was, Gail Simone's writing. And it was her handling of these characters and how she handled this villain team who they weren't nice people. They were nasty people. They were killers. They were, villains for hire. They were mercenaries for hire. But it was still just this wonderful story. And I'm I love those stories. And I'm absolutely salivating over just this carnage. And it was how it was presented, where it was presented. And in the new universe, I'm in agreement with you. I'd love to see the Six come in. And to be honest, I would love to see the Six come in, spring Deadshot from Suicide Squad. And that's the reason he gets out of the Suicide Squad, is because his other team pulls him out and frees him. That for me would be just a yay, happy moment. But again, it's got to be the right time. It's got to be the right team. It's got to be the right creative force behind it. Or, then you're just like, okay, what do we got here? If it's not the right people, then you kind of, makes you wonder and makes you question. It's like you mentioned Team 7. Mm-hmm. That was something that I was like, okay, Team 7, I kind of know somewhat about them. And then I started reading the lineup of it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I dig Deathstroke. Black Canary's pretty cool. Grifter's neat. Amanda Waller, you always got to dig any team she's on. But I couldn't find out who the creative team behind it is. Do you know who? Have they announced it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know for Team 7. Well, actually, as we go through, I'll try to hit that, and I'll let you know. I'm excited for that book a great deal, Team 7.
Oh, definitely. And it's one of those backstory kind of, tales. It's not about current day events. This is occurring beforehand. We're seeing the backlog behind Amanda Waller. They said it was like, this is why we're going to find out why she is the way she is. This is her story as to where it comes from, why she's not as trusting as she is. And again, with Deathstroke, I'm assuming it's going to be a little bit younger version of Deathstroke. Maybe we'll see him lose the eye, because if there was no Teen Titans, because a lot of his eye loss was connected to his kid and everything that happened there. So I'm wondering if we're going to see him with two eyes in this story, and maybe the story will get told behind that. Same thing with Grifter. Maybe we'll get a little bit more on who he is, or Black Canary, where she comes from, and her backstory is, I'm hoping it's kind of going to get fleshed out in this.
It's written by Justin Jordan, Jesus Marino on art, covered by Doug Mahnke. Book looks terrific. I mean, it's one of those things where it's a portion of the DC universe that I think we need explored, because this is going to be a book that takes place in the past. And I got to be honest with you, traditionally, a lot of these books that are taking place out of current day, like Demon Knights, for example, and All-Star Western are some of my favorites. These ones that kind of are establishing bits and pieces of history in DC. So I don't know. I'm welcoming it. I want to see, and I like that it's some of the Wildstorm characters, like Lynch from Gen 13 is going to be a part of it. These are characters who, and they said that this book, when it's released, will have ramifications on the present day as well, because there's events that are going to be spelled out in there that will explain, clarify, and further expand things that are happening currently. There's also been an alluding to in Grifter, because let's talk about that, because Grifter's on Team 7. Voodoo's going to be guest starring in issue 13 in an arc, so I think she's going to be in there for a couple issues. They're going to be gradually bringing together characters who were in the Wildcats, and it's something that's going to be done over time. I would love to see a Wildcats book set in the DC universe. But again, you don't want to keep rolling this stuff out. Bam, brand new team in the DC universe. Make it organic. Make it something where we go, okay, it makes sense that these characters are here and why they're here and why they would have adventures here, versus overwhelming us with characters that it just seems like, how do they fit here? Why are they here? Why should I care? Why does this matter? That's something that I think that they're doing well, is keeping the universe contained, trying to gradually reintroduce new characters. When concepts aren't working the way that they thought they were going to, give them a closure, leave them open-ended so they can appear in other books, be a part of other teams, things like that, and introduce new concepts, try new things. Let's forget a book like Dial H, which I'm digging. I think Dial H is a cool book that came out of it. I remember Karen Berger mentioned at the Vertigo panel that books like Dial H would have been a Vertigo title back in the day. And she said today, that's why they're not doing a lot of the superhero books over in the Vertigo line, because a lot of those characters are just naturally being introduced into the regular DC universe. the way that they should be now. And, Vertigo's being left for like creator-owned concept work, things like that. And I think that's great. I think that distinction that sets the Vertigo line apart in a way that makes a lot of sense, but also puts in some of these edgy versions of characters like Dial H into the current universe. Actually, let me ask you about that. Dial H is one of those titles that I've been digging. It's been out there. I remember when you and I talked about it, though, you weren't too sure about it. Has that changed at all for you? Are you caught up on it? Or is it a title? Where are you at on that book?
It's growing on me. I'm not at the same excitement level you're at with it, but it's not anything I've even thought of not getting. I always do want to get it. I do want to read it and say, okay, what's going on? Where is this going? It's growing on me because it was such a foreign concept to me, and I had no idea anything. So like, okay, where's this at? Okay, yeah, okay, I think growing on me is the closest thing I can come up with and the best thing I can come up with it. It's not a negative. It's not a, oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. It's a title. I read it and I'm like, oh, okay. And the next one comes out. Okay. Yeah. When I'm ordering, I click on it immediately. I don't hesitate. I don't delay or think, do I want to keep getting this? It's not even remotely on the chopping block, but it's not I want to tell everyone to pick up Dial H.
There was the Batgirl was there again from the previous year. The one who was, and actually it was, I give her a lot of credit because she was following her first comment. She followed up from the previous year, and I didn't see this. We had a discussion on our Facebook group where somebody had made mention of her, and you and I have been to enough conventions where there's those people, and it's not a female thing. There's fans who they beat a dead horse, and I'm not saying she necessarily did this. What I mean is they will get a question answered at one panel, and they don't like the answer, so they keep going to panel after panel, bringing up the same question again. And my frustration with that is, with the amount of people lining up for questions at a panel, that takes away from a new question, or maybe somebody to follow up with a comment about that question that you asked, if that makes sense. Like maybe somebody was listening in the audience at that panel to that same question you were asking, and they're like, I can expand upon this. I've got something else I want to ask them to maybe take the discussion to a new level. And you don't give that person a chance to do that because you've already been asking at every panel, and the audience starts grunting and groaning because you keep hogging the mic, and that kind of thing happens. But she got up this time, and one of the things I really liked is she got up and like followed up what she said the previous year and just said that she really liked how they seem to be expanding female characters in the DC universe and female creators in the DC universe. I thought that was cool. I thought it was cool for her to get up and like clarify that, that's something, because I think it's good for them to know that like a year later they're heading in the right direction that fans like her want. It also lets them know that that's something they need to continue working on because people are interested in that and interested enough to follow up a year later. And I think that's a great way to handle it. So I thought it was cool that she followed up with that. Then she was asking a question. I don't know any of this. I'm reading and loving Smallville Season 11. I don't know a lot of what's supposed to be coming down the pipeline in it. I haven't seen a lot of rumors on this. Did you hear anything about a Nightwing being introduced in that?
I did not hear any of that, and I read her comments, and she was talking about Nightwing being introduced, and it was going to be Stephanie for Batgirl. Would you guys change it to Barbara? And I'm like, I didn't even hear any of that. I'm like, and for me, I was like, okay, yeah, I do want to see other superheroes, but I kind of like the one point that, I can't remember which panel it was, but they said, if we're going to introduce the character, we have to go with the most known and the most recognized. And for me, I dig Stephanie Brown. I thought she was a great character, but if you're going to introduce her into the title, it should be Barbara Gordon. Just like if you're going to introduce Batman, it needs to be Bruce Wayne. You gotta go with the name that's known. Hal Jordan as the Green Lantern or John Stewart. You can get away with either one now. I think John is equally recognizable, but I wouldn't go with Guy Gardner, even though Guy is cool and Kyle's cool. I wouldn't go with either one of those two if you're introducing it into Smallville because John and Hal are the two most known, with Hal being the most known of the Green Lanterns. You got to go with what the people know, and I think it's a better way to handle it. Now, granted, as I'm saying this, I was excited that they went with Bart for the Flash and went with Kid Flash as opposed to Flash, so I'm completely throwing that comment and an argument out the window. But Bart's my Flash, so I'm going to say, forget that. I'm happy with that they went with Bart.
Remember, Bart had all the other identities, though. Bart was using them as aliases.
Right.
I loved that. I thought that was kind of a cool way to give a nod to the other Flashes and the Flash legacy. I thought that was kind of neat. Now, I guess my question is, first of all, I don't know that I care one way or another if it's Stephanie Brown or Barbara Gordon. I love that they're bringing... I like when they do nods to... Smallville's its own universe. So when they do nods to any characters in comic continuity, I'm with you. I geeked out that it was Bart. I didn't care if it was Barry, Wally, Bart, whatever. I just love that they brought a Flash in, and then it was instead of introducing a new Flash... like Joe Schmo is the Flash. They went to somebody from comics. I think that's cool. Now, if they're going to do this, because then, remember, in Smallville, as they gradually introduce these, they usually had Smallville characters that were affected by the meteor rock. It wasn't a bunch of DC characters. They were usually original to Smallville. So now we started getting the DC Universe introduced, its own version of the DC Universe introduced into Smallville. Interesting that they're choosing Nightwing for these two characters. Do you think it's because they haven't really introduced a Batman into Smallville? And this is kind of a way to have an acknowledgement of the Batman universe without introducing a Batman right now? And they went with a female character instead of going with a Dick Grayson, just to add some more females to the Smallville cast? Is that what you think they're doing? I'm just speculating here. Because it was funny. I was getting caught up in her comments about it switching from one or the other, but then I was thinking about something like, what's really cool about this whole thing? Forgetting which one they choose out of the two. They're introducing Nightwing not as Dick Grayson, but as one of the two female Batgirls.
See, I took it that they're introducing Nightwing and Batgirl, not Barbara Gordon as Nightwing.
No,
I misread her comments.
Yeah, it's I guess the rumor now, and again, I don't know where her information's from. She was very passionate about it, so I'm not disputing her because I have no idea if what she's saying is true or not. So this isn't a knock on her. She might be reading some Smallville fan forum or Brian Q. Miller's site or something like that, and seeing some little teaser or nod that hey, Nightwing's going to eventually be introduced. And there's rumors of all that.
Again, I'm speculating on her mind thought and where she was going. So I can't.
I like the idea. I hope it's not just a rumor. I like the idea of introducing another female hero into Smallville. I don't care if it's Barbara or Stephanie. I don't know that it really matters. I get that Barbara's more recognizable, and I think if you're going for the general public, and assuming that a lot of the readers of the DC Digital are a mixture of comic fans and Smallville fans, I actually would be curious to see that. How many people are just Smallville fans that are reading that versus just straight comic fans? And I wonder what their download numbers are of that series.
Well, actually, I think that's kind of neat and kind of fits for Smallville. I don't have an issue with I would say go with Barbara Gordon. If they're going to kind of tweak this and twist this around, I would say go with Barbara Gordon, saying she's Nightwing. And my point behind it is, this is the daughter of Commissioner Gordon of Gotham. She's going to be a hero. She's going to go this route. And it's kind of instead of calling herself Bat something, she's going to go with something else that's a nod and an homage to Batman, but she's not part of that family. So for me, I think it would work really cool as Barbara Gordon as Nightwing.
Aquaman was mentioned, and the Zero issue is going to be his first meeting with Atlantis, his first time at Atlantis. More information about his mother. Basically it's the year that he leaves the lighthouse and goes through, which is kind of cool to see that. And then in his regular series, what's going to happen is we're going to see a conclusion of this other storyline that's been going on, and then see who survives and who doesn't. Then it's going to be a Black Manta focused storyline.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I tell you, the Black Manta is a cool character. They're kind of giving us a neat villain, and it's, again, I don't have a long history, a long understanding of who or what Black Manta is. So the way this is coming out, the way it's getting, this right here, this is my Black Manta. This is my quote unquote pretty much introduction to the character. So I'm kind of really digging this reboot, this relaunch, because this is it. This is my first appearance of Black Manta, my first interaction with him. Now I'm going to get some backstory. I'm going to learn more about him. This has been a really, again, Aquaman's been a really cool experience for me. I am very pumped and excited for what we get, what we've got, and what's coming down the line.
You know, one of the questions asked at the New 52 panel was, are there characters you specifically want to bring to the DC universe, to the New 52? And Jeff Johns answered Metal Men, which, you know, kind of seems like a hint that he's going to eventually introduce the Metal Men, which is cool because I'm hoping the Metal Men get introduced in such a way where they're a breakout way hit like an Animal Man and Swamp Thing. I know I keep referencing those, but they happen to be two books that I think are really successful right now. They've got, you know, this cool crossover little mini universe that's going on, like the stuff that I'm liking that's going on in Green Lantern and stuff, and the Bat books is happening over with that little rot and green and red universe that they got crafted over there. I think it's really cool. And I think it's, from what I'm reading, it sounds like Frankenstein is going to become a part of that.
Yeah.
As time goes, and Frankenstein's another cool read. There are these concepts that, like, I think needed this kind of rebooting to be introduced in a way where they're a little bit more accessible and modern and today, while at the same time honoring, you know, the kind of their past history. Metal Men is one I'd love to see introduced in a way, because every appearance that I've read of Metal Men, I gotta admit, I'm not a Metal Men aficionado where I've read everything Metal Men, but in recent years they've done stuff in Wednesday's Comics. In recent years they've done stuff in their own little mini series. When I've seen them, I've really dug the Metal Men. They're characters that I think, if you have a chance, like, how would you do the Metal Men today? You can do that without its backstory. You can introduce them now and in a new way. That, you know, how would you introduce them to a new generation? What would you do differently? How would you make it, you know, a concept where you go, wow, that's neat today? And I'm looking forward to that if they do in fact do that. But
there are characters that I read the story and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, but I'm not passionate about them. But just thinking of, you know, kind of the quirky zaniness, you know, the humor side of Metal Men, you know, doing that now. Will they still have that same kind of fun life, you know, seeking, you know, adventure? It's like, was it Johnny Five, that Short Circuit, the movie, where the robot comes alive? I always kind of picture the Metal Men having that same type of wonderment that Johnny Five always had, because they are just, hey, this is it. Wow, hey, we're alive. And it's just that kind of new experiences and new dealings and new interactions with life and just what is alive. Are these actually creatures of metal? Are they actually alive, or are they synthesized life? You know, is there something more to them? And those are the kind of thoughts I always had with the Metal Men. If you introduce that kind of concept nowadays, that could have a whole new twist to it and a whole new spin to it, because you think about just how we are so technologically, you know, how, you know, focused and centered. You know, a couple of guys I work with, you know, we were talking about smartphones and this and that, and the one guy is like, hey, I don't know about you, but I don't want my appliances that are smarter than me. So they want the dumb phones. They don't want the smartphones. They don't want the high-tech gadgets. And I can kind of see the Metal Men being that next evolution of, you know, the smart gadgets, the AI, is it alive? Is it artificial? What and who are the Metal Men? So they can do some really cool stuff with Metal Men present day society.
I want Kit from Knight Rider. I want K9 from Doctor Who. I want Lieutenant Data from Star Trek. I want C-3PO. I want R2-D2. I mean, you know, these androids and robots and things like that. Metal Men has that capacity to be cool, but it shouldn't be like, you know, those are things that have been done before. It's, where do we take that now? How do we do something different with it now? How do we make that something where I want that wonderment? I guess I'm throwing out those references. I remember when I saw each of those characters for the first time, I was like wowed by them. There was something endearing, there was something fresh, there was something new in those characters. And they still stick with me today as being those type of characters. Metal Men, when you do them, you want to make them something for the modern day. How do we make them endearing like that? I think, Animal Man, why do I talk about that book with so much endearment right now? It's because I really care about him. I care about his family. I'm attached to them because of their unique nature. They're friends. You like to hang out with them. The closest comparison I can give to that book is I loved All New Adam. I know it was a book not a lot of people read. It's one of those series where I remember, his little group of friends, the Brain Trust. I want to see him in the New 52. I loved that version of the Atom. And with Ray Palmer being on, Frankenstein's group, there's a great opportunity to bring Ryan Choi into the current DC universe. I think he's a character that's fresh, cool, and exciting. It's what I like about the Ray. Animal Man has that type of thing about it. These are fresh, fun, exciting characters that are endearing in a way that's very different than any other hero that I'm currently reading. And I want different. I'm reading a lot of titles. And every time you've got a series where I care about it, it's different, it's fresh, it's going to get me attached to that book. And, show me something new and show me a new way to look at these characters while at the same time keeping them feeling classic. You can do that and give them a new status quo or give them a new origin or, retell their story again. The trick is, how do you do that without throwing the concept out the window? Why are Animal Man and Swamp Thing so successful? They're doing that. Those are two titles that are doing that. I've read Swamp Thing before. Was I a huge Swamp Thing fan? I didn't have the budget to follow Swamp Thing, like that. But this is very true to every story I've ever read from Swamp Thing. Say Animal Man, very true to the character that I read. I did read some of the trades of Grant Morrison's work of Animal Man. I've read the minis that you and I both shouted out in the show and that we read. This is great to see this character feeling like he's that same guy, but today. And I don't know, I want to see that with some of these new characters and concepts as they go along the way. And you don't have to fish them all out at once, because I think then if you introduce too many at once, they get lost in the shuffle. I like that some of these series that weren't successful in the New 52, they cancel them at a point where they let the creators finish their arcs and either put on new creative teams or, flat out cancel the series and then move the character to a team book or have them do guest appearances or whatever. But at least then they've been established in the universe and they're now a part of it and it expands the universe. There's plenty of time to do that same history building with this New 52 as they're going through and, try new concepts and new things. I want more breakaway hits like Animal Man and Swamp Thing, and Aquaman. I want to see more of that stuff out there where they're characters that really haven't had a spotlight in a while. And, that's how you get, how did we get a Secret Six? Because of that. That's how you get a Secret Six. Because you try these new concepts. And I want that book that's going to be my next Secret Six. That's going to blow me away and make me think of a concept another way. I keep referencing Secret Six. I think, you and I mentioned it off the air. We both want a second Gail Simone book. Yeah. I know that was her Facebook page that she announced that she's doing a Green Lantern hardcover with Ethan Van Sciver. Somewhere it was announced. I don't remember where. I was surprised that wasn't mentioned at San Diego. Maybe it's something that's still in the it's not far enough along to be at that point yet for announcements. Because it seemed like a lot of their original graphic novels, they were focusing on Superman Earth 2, Part 2. What was cool in that one, did you notice that they didn't announce the Green Lantern one, which is what I was hoping for, but they did announce that there's going to be more Earth 2 hardcovers. There's going to be a third volume of Superman, and there is going to be a second volume of Batman. Which was great. I mean, I'm anxious to see more stories told in that world. They said that it isn't a part of the multiverse. It's its own separate entity, which I don't know why it doesn't need... to me, there's that part of me... I think it's because they want to keep it completely separate versus having crossovers with the current universe, and I kind of respect that. We don't need to necessarily have those characters. I don't need the Earth 1 Superman necessarily meeting our Superman.
Well, I think the Earth 1 Superman would really take down our Superman.
Well, they said that at the one panel. They said that because he'd fight dirty. And I like that. I like the distinction between the two. So I there's that geeky part of me that would eventually like to read a team up between the two of them. But I get what they're doing with these Earth 1s. They're trying to make nice contained pieces where if there's that reader who's picking these up, because I think, these original graphic novels, they have a potential... because they have the Anthony Bourdain one that they put out too. Did you pick that up? I didn't get that one, and I want to get that.
Yeah, I got it.
Did you read it?
I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I did get it.
Did you page through it at all?
No, I haven't. I've got a lot of unopened books.
Yeah, that's one. I don't know. I'm original graphic novel happy. I'm surprised I didn't pick that one up because I thought the Earth One Batman we're going to talk about in our next episode was terrific. I want to talk about that on the show. I love the Superman Earth One. I'm excited for the second Superman Earth One. I love the Jonah Hex original ones that they've done recently and the various Batman ones that they've done. That Anthony Bourdain one, it was funny. I guess I read the blurb of it, and I think on the month that I was going to order it, my budget was just met, and I didn't grab it. And I've seen so much. I watched all the Comic-Con coverage. Spike TV did it, and G4 did it. You know, you don't usually get a whole lot of comic content on those. We get, like, quick blurbs. But Anthony Bourdain managed to get some nice coverage and time on each of those shows. And I was glad to see that because, you know, at least, you know, the graphic novel's getting some attention. Because I think that has a potential to get some people reading a comic graphic novel that wouldn't normally. Just because it's Anthony Bourdain. So I think
definitely.
people who are, like, heavy fans of his shows will maybe pick this up. And I'm anxious to read it now. Because when he was describing it, I was kind of like, okay, you know, if you haven't crafted the perfect sushi or whatever it is, you know, off with your head.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of like a strange, bizarre, interesting concept that I kind of want to read. So, and the artwork looked really terrific. So I'm going to pick that up. But I was curious if you did and you had a chance to read it yet. So I think we're both kind of in the same boat with that. I did think the commentary made me kind of bump that up the list as something I want to read. One of the questions that came up, and this is kind of a lengthy one, one that's thrown out a lot by fans. You know, I think a lot of times there's a lot of discussions about editorial mandates, and when it comes up, it comes up a lot of times as a bad thing being up there. And I got to admit, I don't work for a comic company. I don't know what that's like, so I'm not going to comment on whether editorial mandates, how heavy they are, they're good or bad. I think it's probably a little bit of A and B. I think it probably depends on who you are and what editor you're working with, how much they're on top of you or taking control and things like that. But story length was one of the questions that brought up. Is that editorially mandated or at writer discretion? Bob Wayne said that it's story mandated when the writers come and pitch a story and editor thinks it needs to be 5 issues to fit it all in or something like that. And John said that there's an editorial mandate for the zeros to all be 1 issue long. But Bob Harris insisted that there really is no mandate. And Gail Simone mentioned that it's nice to have it liquid. You know, because then it gives you an opportunity to do some shorter stories, but then some longer form stories, depending. I would imagine it depends on the book, the writer. I would imagine, like, your more established writers or your more established concepts, they probably let them do longer form stories because there's confidence that that book will be around longer, if that makes sense. But I would imagine your books where they're high concept books and they might only last like 8 issues, they'd probably try to encourage them to keep their storylines within a certain number of issues. Just in
keep
case
it a little bit shorter so you get, you know, so the story moves through. You get the beginning, middle, end. So you get a couple story arcs that go through. So you get like a growth and a development with the character.
And even if it's canceled, or at least maybe some additional jump on points along the way, versus saying, okay, we're going to do a 12-issue arc. The story starts at issue 1 and doesn't end till issue 12 on a brand new concept book, but we might not make it to issue 12. You know, I mean, which has got to be a tough thing. So I would imagine it's a little bit of A and B. But I liked that the idea that creators have a little bit more of an open option as far as if they want to do a 5-issue story, or like what Layman's doing, where he's going to do, like, it looks like these one-offs, you know, in Detective Comics. I think that's kind of neat. I think the story should decide its length. Versus being kind of forced into, hey, you've got to make a 5-issue storyline or something. Because I think that became something fans expected, because I think for a while everything was being geared towards the trade, and I don't know that it's necessarily now the case.
And you can make the trade. You can fit a 2-issue arc, a 3-issue arc into one trade. You know, they can do a little bit of tweaking here, a little bit of, you know, manipulation, and they can make these bunch of smaller things into one. It's not set 4 done, 4 done, 4 done. You know, it's now they're looking at the trades a little bit differently. We can have variations in sizes and, you know, in volumes. And I think the comic companies are, you know, realizing this, so they're like, hey, let's just let it go. It's because in the end, we as readers, if we think that the writer, that the creative team behind this, you know, book in front of us had complete control over the size, the number of issues, we're going to have a little bit more connection and enjoyment and or trust with it. If we think This is just a rubber stamp it out to go on to the next thing. This is just a corporation, quote unquote, business dealings. We're going to have less loyalty and connection to it. People always say, oh, comics are becoming too much of a business, and everyone throws that out as a negative thing. Well, guess what? Comics are a business, but you have artists, you have creators who are passionate about the story they're being told. Within this business, DC wants to make money. That's how a company stays running. You need to make a profit. If you don't make a profit, you're gone. It's that simple. That's business 101, if you want to keep going. But it's, I think if the creators if they either have the appearance or if they actually have the control, I'm going to be a little bit more comfortable. I'm going to be a little bit more trusting, and I'm going to throw out more money to somebody I know is more passionate about a title than someone who I think is just working a title.
Even independent creators, it's a business for them. I think when you're just breaking in at the ground floor, you're into that art. You want to get your story told, and you're in that artistic mode, where you want to get the artistry out there, your concept out there and all that, and you're excited to get that out into the hands of people. But ultimately, you want it to make money, too. I think that's part of the process. I get excited when I hear that an Aquaman's doing well, an Animal Man's doing well, a Swamp Thing's doing well. Because, Swamp Thing and Animal Man especially, even more than Aquaman, they aren't names that people know. And to see that those books are breakout hits, surprise hits for the company, that's a success for the New 52 for me. Because you're taking some books that, normally you wouldn't expect to do well, and they are now. And I'm glad to hear them, because that was mentioned at repeated panels that those were breakout books. There's a piece of news I want to mention, Jim, and I forgot to mention this earlier. Quentin Tarantino's movie, it's Django Unchained. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But I'm not usually one of those where I go, I've got to get the movie tie-in to the comic. Because usually to me, movie tie-ins, you run into this weird mixed bag of it's a watered-down version of the movie. Usually. Sometimes there's gems. When I was a kid, I got the Star Wars adaptations and all that stuff, and I loved them. So I'm not going to pretend that I've never bought movie adaptations. But usually, there's something, you feel like there's not something of substance always in that movie adaptation. This one I like because what they're doing is they're using the whole script. So the things that were cut from the film are going to be in the comic. So the comic's going to have something more than the movie. This, to me, should be a template of what you do with a comic adaptation. It's something when you get this kind of announcement, and there may have been better movie adaptations that have come out recently, so I'm not going to pretend. In recent years, I haven't bought movie adaptations. If I have, maybe one or two. It's not something that I tend to flock to. This one, though, I'm picking up for sure. First of all, I love Tarantino's work, so I'm anxious to see the movie. If you'd told me it was a straight adaptation, I wouldn't have picked it up. You tell me you're using the full script and you're going to throw in everything? All right, now it's a supplemental to the movie. I'm probably going to see the movie first, then read the comic, but I am going to pick it up. This is a guaranteed buy for me.
If I'm thinking of the correct Quentin Tarantino movie, this is that movie where it was a Japanese adaptation of the old spaghetti westerns.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm 90% sure that that's what this is. So it's that
Jamie Foxx is starring as Django.
Okay.
And he's a slave whose brutal history with his former owners lands him face to face with German-born bounty hunter Dr. King Schultz. And Schultz is on the trail of the murderous Brittle brothers, and only Django can lead him to his bounty. The unorthodox Schultz acquires Django with a promise to free him upon the capture of the Brittles, dead or alive. And throughout this, it's a big cast. It's Jamie Foxx. I'm trying to think of who else is in this.
Okay, I'm thinking
DiCaprio,
of the wrong movie then.
Leonardo DiCaprio. But it is kind of a Western kind of theme, I know, in the way that it's set. But Jamie Foxx is the lead character in there. And it looks really cool. Samuel L. Jackson's in it, I know. Yeah. It's got quite a cast to it. I saw the preview. They actually showed a trailer for the film. And the film I'm really excited to see. So I saw that, and then I heard there was going to be a comic adaptation. I was kind of like, okay, that doesn't usually excite me until I'm so glad I read this. You hear Tarantino talk about, no, there's a bunch of stuff I had to cut from the movie. It's all going in the comic. This should be what they do with comic adaptations. Give us the bonus stuff, the extras, the stuff that didn't make it in the movie. Let then comic creators bring that to life. I love that. That's exciting.
Oh, definite.
Must
yeah.
buy. Must buy. I mean, it's a definite must buy for me. And I think he came in the Before Watchmen panel. I don't know. It was the Before Watchmen panel. I'm not going to go too crazy into time-wise. Only to say we're going to, after our Batman episode, which is coming up this coming weekend, our next episode is going to be when I get back from my vacation. So it's going to be a little over a week in that we release it. We're going to do a heavy talk about Before Watchmen there. And there was nothing really news-wise in the panel other than it was kind of further clarifying the backstory of Before Watchmen. It was kind of cool because all the creators did mention that they got the projects that they wanted to go to. It also talked about how Darwin Cook took a couple years to convince to be a part of the whole thing. He wasn't sure about being a part of it. And I think it was cool to see that this is a project that has been in development for a long time. And I think it shows in the quality of the books. I'm very excited to talk about that, and it's something where it really, I think rather than talk about the panel, we'll just wait till our episode and talk in depth about those books, because I've been really enjoying the experience. And it'll be cool because we'll also have the Crimson Corsair story. We'll have a lot more of that under our belts, and we'll be able to really talk heavy about that storyline in there. The Vertigo panel was really cool. It was more of a clarification that things like the annotated Sandman Volume 2 is going to be coming out in the fall. There's going to be things like Sweet Tooth's going to be wrapping up. He said that before he even started the story, he knew what the ending was going to be. So this was something that was always planned all along. Scalped is coming to an end soon. I actually like the Vertigo stories that have ending, that they're eventually going to get there. American Vampire, I know, has an eventual ending, and they said that that's at the halfway point now. Yeah. The next story is The Blacklist, and it's Pearl and Skinner teaming up to kill Dracula-style vampires in the 1950s Hollywood. And they said from there the series is going to be heading into a totally different direction. It's a good jumping-on point for people who haven't been reading it before. I do encourage people that, if there's a Vertigo title that you've been wanting to jump on, a lot of these Vertigo series lend themselves with new arcs as good jumping on points. I did that with Sandman, and that was one of those books where I kind of jumped on midway through. I don't always do that with Vertigo titles, but, Sandman, Hellblazer, stuff like that with longevity, I do. The Unwritten is going to be going more into the history of Tom Taylor coming up, and The Unwritten's a series that I can't recommend enough. There's a lot of really good stuff coming out from Vertigo. Fairest is going to continue its kind of anthology style, where some of the stories are going to be by Willingham, some of the stories are going to be by other creators, but Willingham's always going to be kind of a creative consultant on the whole thing, so that way it all richly ties into the Fables universe. So I like that, how that's kind of Fables has its own little tight universe that's going on there. So I don't know, there's a lot of stuff from Vertigo. Is there anything else from San Diego that was announced? We've discussed a lot. I can't think of anything else that's pressing that I really want to, other than saying it was kind of a cool con, just to see some of the news coming out of there. Those three big announcements were kind of the biggies for me: the Tim Drake one, the Neil Gaiman Sandman one, and then of course that surprise for the Django Unchained. I kind of like that's a high profile movie, and having a comic adaptation that. I think that's another bridging one where fans of that film know that they're going to be getting the extras, and it might try a comic book for the first time. And I'm a fan of that for that reason. But is there anything else from the convention that you want to shout out that we maybe haven't mentioned?
Well, two things. One, they talked again about the girl with the dragon tattoo, about the graphic novel coming out with that. And I was never really that excited. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Because I really didn't know the story behind the girl with the dragon tattoo, and I had talked to somebody, and apparently they didn't know the story either, because the way it was told to me, it was like, oh, it's another one of those Twilight type movies. It's
not at all.
Books. It's a nothing, and it's completely nothing like Twilight. It's completely nothing like that, and it's actually a really outstanding story. I saw the movie. I'm getting the actual physical book. Gonna probably read that. Looking forward to this graphic novel. So it was funny seeing them a little bit talking about how it's coming out and getting ready for it. It just reminded me once again of just how you got to watch your source of who you're getting information from.
Well,
and
now when you say you saw the movie, did you see the American one or the original subtitled movie? Because they did all three books. My wife read the books. Yeah. And she loved them. They're Stieg Larsson books. She read all three of them. And there's the girl with the dragon tattoo, the girl who kicked the hornet's nest. I forget the name of all three of the movies, but we saw all of the movies, the versions of the movies that were out there. And the girl from the original movies was actually in Prometheus just recently. It was out. But I also have seen now the version with the guy who plays James Bond.
Yeah.
And that was terrific, too.
Yeah, so that's the version I've seen right now.
Okay.
I've only seen the American version of the Girl with Dragon Tattoo. So I'm looking actually to get the other versions, to get the books, to get the graphic novel. This is because this character is like, holy crud, she is awesome. Yeah. This is a great character, and this was one of those. It kept swerving, it kept hitting and surprising me. I was like, "This is neat." I'm like, I was thinking one thing, and it's gone this way over here. So this was, something that I'm very excited about, and I'm like, I want to read this. I'm looking forward to this one coming out.
We saw all three of the subtitled movies on Netflix streaming. Mm-hmm. Oh, they were really, really good, and the girl's just as cool as you say. So, I mean, you're not going to lose it, because I've seen, I saw the new revamped version, which they've only done the first book so far. I hope, and it looks like they're going to keep going with it, because that was successful as well. I want to read the books. I actually want to read the graphic novels. I didn't pick it up, the first one that came out, and I want to grab that now, because they're doing 6 of them, they were saying. There's going to be 6 graphic novels total to tell the whole story. I want to read those, because I'd like to see the graphic novel adaptations. It's funny how when I heard that they were doing 6, I'm like, wow, they're really going to do this in depth? I don't know if I'm going to grab the graphic novels first or grab the books first. I haven't decided yet. But the films I can't recommend enough. I'm definitely into the story. I guess for me, I'm tough with, if I've already seen the film, in most cases, I'm not really good about reading the book or the comic adaptation afterwards unless there's something extra to it, something that was drastically missing from the film. In the case of those books, though, I definitely want to read those, because my wife raved about them, and she said that there's a lot of things that are explored in the books that they couldn't do in the movie, just because of time limits. So it's going to be well worth reading. I'm glad you mentioned that. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention that we kind of left off?
Well, you know what? There was a Sword of Sorcery.
Oh!
The Amethyst one. And it was funny. I no idea who Amethyst is. I still don't really know who she is, but just when they started talking about it and explaining that it's this more, it sound more fantasy, goblins, trolls, and whatnot, and it was just this completely different type of entity, different type of story, and I was like, you know what, just their selling of it, I was like, I'm kind of curious about this one now. If when they first said Amethyst, I was like, okay, I don't care. Now Sword of Sorcery, I'm actually kind of curious, and I want to pick this thing up.
Yeah, well, and it's going to the cool part with that anthology is that that's not going to be the only story in it. There's going to be a backup story in every one. They compared it. They said it's going to be like a fantasy version of All-Star Western.
Yeah.
It's going to be that same format as All-Star Western. I'm looking really forward about that. The other one that I'm very curious about, Phantom Stranger, because we saw him in the Free Comic Book Day issue.
As a part that was a cool story.
Yeah, as part of that Trinity of Sin. And they said they're going to build off of that and to see why he fell and who he is now, and that's going to lead to the ongoing series with the Phantom Stranger. I'm interested in that, because Phantom Stranger's been always one of those characters that I've wanted to know more about, but I've never really had a chance to read, other than, he's been like a guest appearance and kind of an enigma in the books that he's been in. So I would like to actually get a chance to really read and get to know the Phantom Stranger. See, and that's funny, because that's a title, like if you had told me a few years ago that I would be sitting here and being able to pick up a Phantom Stranger book, I'd been telling that people are nuts. Yeah. But I think with what's happened with Swamp Thing and Animal Man, that's gotten me more excited for concepts like Phantom Stranger, because I'm like, wow, I really dig those two books in a way that they've been kind of, for me, breakout hits of excitement. Animal Man, I've really got a soft spot for Animal Man. I really dig that book. I mentioned that multiple times, on the podcast as being one of the titles that really has stood out for me as being one people should read. And it's because, you remember I was telling you got to read Sweet Tooth. Yeah. It's Jeff Lemire.
And you were right.
Yeah. Jeff Lemire is just really, really a terrific writer. He's doing Justice League Dark, too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, man.
Yeah.
I've been digging Justice League Dark, and when this all came out, if you had told me that I would be enjoying Justice League Dark as much as I am now, I'm like, really? I don't know. It looks cool. It looks interesting, but I don't know about it. I'm really digging it. And now, hearing he's coming onto the title, the Magic universe is really, it's striking a chord with me. And it's something that I was like, wow, this is a really neat concept. These are some really cool stories.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to correct something here too. Remember we were talking about Stephanie Brown in that DC New Wave panel? She actually got an answer about this. So you know what? I'm going to correct myself. She was right to be persistent because it is Stephanie Brown is going to be replaced by Barbara Gordon. They said if we're going to introduce guest characters into the Smallville universe, we want to introduce the most recognizable characters like Barbara Gordon, Dick Grayson, and Bruce Wayne. That's the reason why Stephanie Brown is being replaced by Barbara Gordon in the Smallville comic.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I always like Smallville being contained, too, is a good answer. So, you know what? I'm going to say I was wrong. That girl was right to keep on going.
Hey, you know what?
I'll admit I'm going to admit my mistake there, because she got her answer. So, you know what?
Hey, Norge?
Yeah.
I'm going to give up for her persistence.
Yeah, good for her.
Outstanding. Good job.
Yeah, I was just looking at her. I'm like, oh, wait, we should probably note this, because she won. Yay, her.
And I think they mentioned that Steel's going to be introduced.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to get Steel. I'm hoping it's John Henry Irons.
It is, because we've seen him already.
Okay.
We saw John Henry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it is John Henry Irons. We've already seen him.
Yeah.
Multiversity is still going to be published, but that's another one they're waiting until it's done, which I kept forgetting about that one. Somebody asked about that at one of the panels, and I was glad they asked because it's one of those series. But I feel like about that the same way I do about things like Widening Gyre. Go ahead and put it out when it's ready to go. Don't put it out and then put a 6 months in between. I actually really like that they're being aggressive about taking a look at certain projects and saying, this project just needs a little bit more time. So let's put it out when it's ready to go. Yes, it's a little harder to wait for. But I'm that way. I've got that video game mentality with that. I love playing video games and stuff like that. But my biggest frustration is when a game's rushed out when it's not ready to go. And, that it's got bugs and it takes away from the experience and stuff like that. Well, comics, if, something's published and you get issue 1 in January and then you don't see issue 2 until July, part of the experience is lost. You're taken so far away from the delivery of it. So when it's a miniseries like that and you have the opportunity to wait and put it out when the time is right or to split it up in 2 pieces like they did with Widening Gyre, you should. And then put it out when it's all done. And I think I hope they're noticing a better sales number by doing that. I support that. I'm going to gladly support Widening Gyre and Multiversity when they come out because they're waiting to release those projects till they're ready to go. I'm a fan of that, and I hope that's a continued thing moving forward. I think we all should support that.
Yes.
Takes away kind of the frustration. I'd rather read the complete story in a timely fashion when it's ready to be released than to sit there and go, oh, geez. Yeah. So I think companies are getting better with that. Well, they said Justice League. That was in one of the panels that Jim Lee had a ghost artist. It's an unnamed ghost artist who was making sure that book stayed on time. I'm a fan of that, too. If it's an issue where you've got somebody who's a co-publisher, who's got obviously a lot of responsibilities, and you want to make sure that book stays on time, do that.
I want to see those panels, dude. I want to see those pages and just the differences because there's going to be some variations. There's going to be some little tweaks. Something's going to be just a little bit different because it's a different artist's hand doing it. So, yeah, I'd like to see some, in a collected edition or just releasing them or just something.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I would love to see, something like that. I'm a big fan nowadays of bonuses. I think, digital bonuses and trade paperback bonuses and hardcover bonuses and stuff like that, that makes the collected edition worth buying. I'm seeing a lot more companies now releasing digital trades, which digital versions of the collected edition. Those have the bonuses and the extras. Battle Pug. I want to shout that out. That's Mike Norton's book. He won an Eisner for it, and it's our friend of the show, Alan Pasalacqua, did the color work on it. It's the webcomic. It's been collected by Dark Horse. The digital version of that, I was looking at it today because I'm going to grab it, that has some bonuses and extras not seen on the website. I think that's really important with collected editions, whether it's digital or paper, hardcover or softcover, whatever version you're doing. I love seeing that behind-the-scenes stuff. I like when they do it in the regular comics, when they'll every so often put a couple extra bonus pages of concept art and stuff like that. I like seeing, how did you get to this? Because I'm not a creator. I'm a fan. I love DVD extras on films and stuff like that. Especially when it's something I'm really digging. I love seeing, what the book that could have been, or seeing sometimes an artist do their own color work, or a colorist do some of the pencil work, and do that stuff as a bonus. This is what I would have done, or things like that. I don't know, that stuff is kind of neat to me, or maybe some of the sketches from a writer, because Morrison's famous for, drawing out some things sometimes, to get the storyline across to people. I like seeing that kind of stuff because I think every creator has a different process, no matter where you are in the phase of the production end of it. And that stuff as fans, it's fun to see those distinctions and those differences and the thought process and what maybe didn't make it to the page that was intended, but because the story shifted, a need or something. I don't know. I'm a fan of that stuff, so I'm glad that those digital versions are collecting that. And Battle Pug, I just want to shout out, is really, really amazing. Another very, very cool book that I just wanted to shout out. And the digital, I think, is like $7 or $8. I think for it. It was on the Dark Horse Digital site. So I ended up grabbing it there. But then there's a cool paper version as well. So if that's your preference, so you can go that route. I want to read it on my iPad. So I'm going, just because of the webcomic, I just kind of feel like that's how I want that delivery method. But I like that it's available in multiple different ways. So that's kind of cool. I don't know. Anything else, buddy?
I don't know. I think that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. We didn't want to regurgitate everything from the panels. It was an interesting con. At this point, I like that, they're just kind of clarifying that, hey, we spent a year with this new universe, and, we're still working at fleshing it out and adding on to it. It's a building process, building a universe, and that shouldn't be something that should be 1 year and done. That process should continue ongoing. The DC universe is a very, very big, rich place. We all want new things. They answered a lot of questions about characters we were wondering if they're going to appear. Oh, Raven on Teen Titans is a for sure. We're going to be seeing, I don't know if she's going to be on the team. I think she's going to be on the team. Possibilities for characters like Supergirl, for example, to be on the team. Possibility for characters like Blue Beetle to be on the team, but those aren't set in stone yet. The possibilities down the road of those characters maybe being on the team were being announced. Supergirl was one they were big time saying that they would love to have Supergirl at some point. I would love to see that as well.
Yes.
But both of those characters. There will be meetings between Wonder Girl and Kid Flash and counterparts, Flash and Wonder Woman.
Oh, nice.
So those are meetings that we eventually want to see, especially with the fact that their origins are different. So what are those first meetings going to be like? Are they going to get along? Can we all get along? I don't know. So I'm going to be curious to see those as well. There were so many news tidbits. Those are some things that just stood out for me that I think we forgot to mention. Overall, a good con.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the atom.
Want to quickly shout out show sponsors, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Also want to thank you guys for listening to this unedited episode as we discuss the San Diego Comic-Con. This is our midweek episode, kind of a surprise episode for us because you and I really threw this one together on the fly. Our next episode is going to be The Dark Knight Rises and Batman Earth 1. We will see you then.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and loss and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan. And what you do to me, Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things will be so much easier